Destiny. How I Fell in Love with My Favorite Game by Whitelight. I actually had this recommended to me a few times as somebody who still plays Destiny 2, playing Act 3 of Heresy as of this point in time. I do enjoy it. I unfortunately don't run things like Salvation's Edge. I don't even run Crota's anymore because people say they know what to do in a raid and they can't even do lamps on Crota. So the LFG scene to me is kind of just a little wonky. As I said, someone who can run duo planets, probably hard carry Raider Nightmares in certain aspects. Yeah, I like the game. I thoroughly enjoy it. So I kind of want to hear what the community has to say as much as I'm a little cautious of that, because anytime I hear the community say something, generally the sentiment has been crafting ruined the game. I'm burnt out on the game because XYZ ABC, the standard affair. So if this is a good faith piece, I'm into it.
Here we go. Oh, right, yeah, of course. Okay, thanks. I hear that's pretty good. Yeah,
I hate
thanks.
notifications.
Yep, okay. Right, yes. That cost $20. Gambit, yeah, of course. Yeah, but I'm a warlock. Oh. Well, that's good to know. Good to be back. You gotta admit, this video would be better if it was in Chinese. You gotta be real with me on that. Well, I'm working on it, and I'm here to help you too. You're getting 96% off one of the biggest language learning apps in the world. It's Mondly's limited time spring sale. Now what makes Mondly so good, aside from the fact that it's 96% off, and the range of languages available, and the recordings from real natives and all that,
Naranja.
is the hands-free capabilities. So if you like to learn while you cook or clean, if you're a parent, a gamer, or say a teddy bear who wants to learn the language of his home country like this IKEA jungle skog, Mondly's got you covered. Here mate, say I really enjoy these practical lessons that I can actually use in my everyday life in Swedish.
Jag heter Djungelskog.
For real? Well damn, Jungle Skog. I guess I'll check it out.
Naranja.
Indeed, I will remember to go to mondly.app/whitelight with a link in the description and or pinned comment. I guess it's Destiny.
Melón.
I would give that... I'm between a 6 and a 7 out of 10. I think it's going to be a 6 out of 10 for me. I think the ad was shotgunned way too soon, personally. The length was fine. It was about 40-ish, 50-ish seconds. I mean, visuals made sense. Definitely personable. I liked it. Don't know if there was enough of a hook to segue into that. It was kind of a hard segue as well. Just, obviously, once again, React content criticism, right? I mean... No shade, no disrespect. I would give it a 6 out of 10, right? 5 is kind of my average ad read. This is about a 6, I think. I think if, I don't know, maybe if we tied it to Destiny a little more, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Probably. Yeah, that's where I'm going to rate that.
Man, there really was something special about old Destiny, wasn't there? Just the feeling of it. I'm nostalgic for it now because I really like playing it, but I was nostalgic for it like a week after it came out. And people can relate to that. But why? How did they make that happen? Maybe it's got something to do with how much Destiny drew from the cultural titans of nostalgia, things that were old and loved. The Wild West, Star Wars, high fantasy, Halo, the closest thing to the musical character of John Williams in The Lord of the Rings that a video game score had ever been. And shit, not only did one of the Beatles help compose it, he sang for it too. Destiny was made from old love. But beneath the aesthetic was also a heart, that division of Tolkien and Star Wars between fundamental forces of light and dark, an elevation of heroes and legend, an endorsement of hope. None of which made Destiny good, but perhaps refreshing for its unusual sincerity. What other Western action game, what other shooter would have been willing to center itself without irony on something that might have seemed so naive, so childish to the gaming culture of the time? What other game like this would have called itself something as unmanly as Destiny? This was something old, but here it was something new. Destiny was familiar, but it wasn't generic, and despite its nostalgic inspirations, it did not have its mind stuck in the past. Destiny's
I don't know about generic, because I missed most of Destiny 1. I played Year 1 D1 before Vault of Glass launched. Like, I got through the campaign, right? Saw the Heart of the Black Garden, right? Which lore dumps in D2 as to what that actually was. I would say generic was actually a word that I personally would have used for D1 at the time. Now, once again, I haven't played the entirety of D1, right? I own it. The intent has been to stream it at some point in time, and I do apologize about that. Keeping up with 2+ videos a day on React channel content, VOD channel content, now Twitch streams, etc. It's really eating into my time, especially trying to get actual real life things moving. So I haven't, unfortunately, and I don't have that. I mean, the meme stands true as far as what I understand, right? If you you are Iron Lord by title. I was crowned by insert D1 meme here. We've all heard the you are Iron Lord by title. I am Iron Lord by succession. We're not the same kind of thing. Because the Cabal felt pretty generic, at least base D1 year one, right? To me at least, right? It felt similar to kind of Mass Effect in a way. Sure, you got your shield unit, Mass Effect 3, because Mass Effect 3 was actually something that I played through at the time, and you had your flamer units, your shield units, etc. So, I mean, like the Vex were kind of cool. I like the modularity with how you could take them down, especially the Hobgoblins, where you could take off their head, right? I feel that generic would actually be a word I would use, at least for what little I have played.
Past was dead, the old world was ruins, and we could never go back. This was about going forward, into a new world where things were strange again. Guardians were cast as timid explorers, scratching at the edges of vast cosmic mysteries, all so much bigger than us, and the tiny enclave of humanity we fought for. Everything was a mystery. Out there, stalkers from ravaged galaxies away hunted in the wastes of Earth, and the outer worlds that once belonged to us. Out there were dragons that could make a wish come true, machines that stole time, and philosophies with fangs, and we were walking into its open jaw to buy time for our dying god. Everything was just hanging on. Everything loomed. But the music in particular understood that there was more emotion to be found in that than fear. There was beauty, untold and divine. There was hope for our people. Feelings as simple and bright as curiosity and wonder. The possibility of adventure. Humanity was lost, but Destiny thought it would be a beautiful thing to find something new. The story Destiny told with words was kind of awful, and the parts that weren't awful were all on the lore cards, none of which could even be read in the game. But if you listened to Bife, you were sure to be glad, because this was some premium shit, man. This was Seth Dickinson before Seth Dickinson became Seth Dickinson. And so My Name is Bife became My Name is Bife, and a million people would come to hear it spoken. So rich it was in character, thinking, and mysteries, yet more and yet deeper. That the world we walked through in-game was filled from door to horizon with history, and most of all, with imagination. The world was new, and we had every reason to believe that when Destiny found its footing, one day, we would get to meet some of those imaginings, answer some of these mysteries. So, I was willing to see beyond what I was shown, to believe in what wasn't really there. What added to the vibe was the fact that we were discovering the game itself, too. Destiny was new and also not finished, which meant very little was explained, so to do things right, we were...
Yo, that map, though.
Destiny was new and also not finished.
Wow, it's been a hot minute, hasn't it? Oh, wow.
Which meant very little was explained, so to do things right, we were forced to discuss them online. And the upside of that was that Destiny very quickly formed a strong community, strong bonds, as players were made to share in this communal feeling of discovery. It was true both of the gameplay and of the story. We needed Bife to read us the lore because there was no convenient way of doing it ourselves. We needed Datto to tell us how to complete the exotic quests because the alternative was agony. And we certainly needed someone to teach us how to do the raids, because apparently, the most complicated encounters in the game didn't warrant so much as like a text box. I really do believe that at some point, Bungie became aware of the fact that they could unofficially outsource Destiny's tutorialization to its online community, and in one way that mattered, the game would actually benefit from doing so. This connection between content and community has only strengthened in the years since, the raid of the final shape being completed for the first time in the world, which is usually streamed as a race by major members of the community.
Dude, I was watching this. It was wild to have. I remember watching it, because I remember watching it. It was, Clan Elysium, Datto, a bunch of people, bunch of groups were streaming this. They definitely, what was it? Encounter 1 took a while to crack. Encounter 2, they blitzed through. The wall was Encounter 4, and I actually got in an argument on Twitter where some, in my opinion, entitled belt holder was just like, oh, well, you didn't run this, you didn't clear this day one. You have zero excuse to talk about anything in regard to the raid. Even though I was agreeing with him that Encounter 4, from a learning perspective, is in fact, in my opinion, a little rough. From an actual blind learning perspective in regards to feedback, especially mechanics that have not really been showcased anywhere else in the game, because you have to die in the raid. It doesn't eat a token, but you do have to go into the funny rooms, you have to dunk your symbols, and then they have to bring your ghost to the proper statue, right? That's not anywhere else in the game, and people reasonably got stuck on Encounter 4. And I think that illustrates the I think it illustrates the dichotomy is the word I'm going to use here, between the Destiny community that people say they remember, like this video, and the modern Destiny community. The modern Destiny community is more about mostly about fast tracking content. Is going to be, in my opinion, specifically just looking for hard carries. People who genuinely just don't want to play the game because that from everything they say about crafting. Well, crafting just ruined the game. If you get all your crafted weapons from Kingsfall, why would you ever run Kingsfall again? Because I enjoy the content. Because if I physically had the people to run it with, I would absolutely run raids to the point that I'm top 2%. 100%. I will do the content. Sure. I like being able to craft. I think that being able to, not go GM after GM after GM in a night and get 0 bait and switch rolls. Sure. Give me some way to at least guarantee it. I'll run the GM 50 times. I don't care. But we've talked about on stream as well. I think they found a neat little point, at least as of right now, Act 3 Heresy, where the loot drops are fine enough to kind of warrant some of those drops. And then and there's certain things that are still craftable, like vaulted glass weapons, right? I inherently disagree, and I do think that's a pretty L take to say crafting bad, screech, because why would I ever run the content again? If it's a raid, yeah, I'll run it. I'll run Salvation's Edge. I'll run Crota's. But I need to make sure that other people are able to run the content as well. If you want to learn a raid, Root of Nightmares. I've taught it plenty of times. It's actually the most run raid on my raid report. So I think it's interesting to see how people remember the community versus how the community is now and the evolution of people throughout that. It's interesting to look at.
Was necessary to unlock the final mission for everyone else. The online community was, in this way, made a meaningful part of the narrative universe. That's a hell of a thing, and Bungie know it. They know how it appeals to people to feel like they're a part of something. Destiny was the first MMO-like game to enter the AAA console sphere. So for many players, it was the first time a game had ever made them feel that way. I suppose if one word could truly unify what made Destiny special back then, it would be discovery. A world of wonder to be discovered together. When that magic was at its strongest, Destiny was my favorite video game. I think, and I still can't quite believe this, that was the most I have ever loved a video game. Sometimes I fear that I'll never feel that way about any game again, which is remarkable, really, because Destiny kinda sucked balls. The shooting was good, thank God, but the loot was bad, the balance was bad, the content was bad, the story, that was bad. Nothing made sense. Shit, man, back then you could open a legendary engram and get a blue. The psychic damage that unleashed onto the world rivals the invention of the nuclear bomb. And yet, Destiny was loved, and Destiny lived, because the shooting was good, and there were friends, and a magic that not only made the game worth playing, but worth waiting for.
Wow, you mean a game that's a social experience is super legit when it's a social experience? Is that, from a core design philosophy standpoint, I don't know enough about D1 customization, right? I know that there was some customization. I know that as D1 has depreciated into whatever state it's in right now on consoles, there are certain things like the Kingsfall pre-order armor. I think that's unequipable, and people have been submitting tickets to Bungie. Allegedly, this has gone unanswered for a period of time. I don't know. Someone's going to have to inform me on that specifically. But when you look at it, at least from the D2 UI, right? You have your ghosts. You have different ghost shells that you can use. And it's okay, yeah, sure. You have your, you pre-ordered Final Shape because you have this Final Shape ghost. And, you have this little egg ghost shell because, you did the Easter event or you bought it on the... Like you have that personability. I mean, I run full Crotas on my Warlock with Carminica, a Crucible shader, because Red Go Burr, right? I love it. You have emotes. And I heard that there's some coding issues in regards to why there's only 4 emote slots available and not like an emote wheel, and that has to do with how many... I think it has to... What is it? It has to render every single Guardian, say, in the tower, and their 4 emote slots. So there's a lot of processing goes on behind the scenes from what I've heard. It is a social experience. You can just go to the tower, walk up to Saladin, or walk up to Vendor, and just use your Callus emote set, right? Or you have emotes which are clearly designed for, content creation, Twitch, YouTube, where you have emotes that point, emotes that do things. It is a social experience at its core. I think we can all kind of collectively come together, analyze that, and go, yeah, it's a social experience. So naturally, a social experience is going to be the best it is when it is a social experience. It's kind of why I like 14, when I can be able to sit down with other players to play Final Fantasy 14 and do, say, Arcadian Raid Series Part 2, right? Very good.
Hoping for. We all wanted to see Destiny become the game it was meant to be. So few games get what it was given, a second chance. If I knew then that Destiny would survive even one more year, let alone 10, I would have been overjoyed. But if I had such a window to the future, then I would also have to know something terrible. That in 10 years' time, Destiny wouldn't be my favorite game. That it wouldn't even be a game I played. That Destiny would still be alive, but it wouldn't anymore be loved. For those of you who don't know, I used to make Destiny videos. My kind of awful critique of Destiny 2 Vanilla was one of the first videos that did well on my channel. Did it again for Forsaken, then again for Shadowkeep. I said I'd keep going, but I stopped. It wasn't because I wasn't interested. It's because I didn't know how to make the video I needed to make. I've tried, man. I've tried to write this thing 6 times since Shadowkeep. What came out was always some complicated haze of feelings that I could never properly tie into a full review of the current expansion. So, lucky number 7 then, with a simpler goal. I'm just gonna tell you why I fell out of love with what was once my favorite game. This video
I did like this intro. I think that this is coming from a very good faith argument place, as much as, like we've cited before with my argument with an actual raid belt holder, where it feels like arguments could become very bad faith very quickly. And this is actually kind of my issue with modern media. I mean, even chat brings up points like, I stopped playing Destiny because X, or I hate, something about X, right? It's the Star Wars effect, right? When is the last time you had a good faith discussion and were able to just kind of like talk about Star Wars? Whether that's how much you liked Luke Skywalker's character arc from 5 into 6, whether that's how much you like the political intrigue and the fall of the Republic into the Empire, in the prequel trilogy. When is the last time you genuinely had a good conversation about Star Wars? And that's really where I feel Destiny's kind of. I think there's a commentary there on modern media, and people, and echo chambers there as well. I do think that there is something of substance there. I think there's an absolute commentary there. However, the issue that I run into is when it's always, well, I had this happen in the server recently, right? Because I was pinging, was trying to get, I think it was Volta Glass or Crotus together. I can't remember. And a follow-up comment was along the lines of, it's just standard, this is why I don't play Destiny anymore, or, I wanted to like this game, etc. To which you kind of intuit that people want to be validated in their opinions, and that's fine. If you don't like Destiny, that's fine. If you did like Destiny and you fell out of love with Destiny, that's fine. If you feel that crafted weapons aren't where you want the game to be, that's fine, as long as you're not making the experience detrimental to other people, right? Like, you're allowed to have opinions. So I guess for me, maybe this is the neurospicy individual in me coming out, I don't understand the need for validation, right? Like, if I'm going to go, if I said right now, hey chat, after this stream, I was going to go plan on teaching Ruder Nightmares. It's a teaching Ruder Nightmares post. I'm going to go teach some Ruder Nightmares. Would anybody be interested? Two, if that's immediately followed up by, man, I used to love Destiny, but XYZ, or, I just haven't really installed the game because of X. You don't have to justify yourself to me. So there's clearly something there that people want to feel justified, and I think we could peel back the curtain even a little bit more, where people want to love the game. But I think the title is going to be true for a lot of people, where they have fallen out of love with the game. I think that there's a lot going on here, and I do like that this is a good faith argument, at least it is so far as being presented as a good faith argument.
It won't be a catalogue of everything the game's done wrong since launch, every reason someone might have fallen out of love. It's personal, it's my reasons, it's biased, it had to be. But maybe you'll see some of yourself in here too. And make no mistake, I'm not here to tell you Destiny is bad either, because it's not. Apart from all the bits which are bad, obviously, it's actually better than ever. I don't hate Destiny, I like Destiny, and I think it is good, but I used to love it. That's the difference. For me, I think it started with the story. The darkest fate that Destiny's imaginings would ever have to endure was entering the sphere of stories told by Destiny, the game. A border like an event horizon that when crossed renders things simple, hollow, and, like this simile, kind of clumsily executed. And that's made painful by the times they do it right. Moments in The Witch Queen, the Vanguard arcs in the final shape. For the most part though, Destiny's characters are flat and predictable. There's a version of the darkness that's interesting, but it's not the one we get in the game. It's
Sure. Like, a simplistic story can still be good, though. I do take a little bit of issue with that from a narrative standpoint. That's fine. Xenos, Final Fantasy 14. I've gushed about him over how many reaction videos. Dude just wants to fight. Dude's kind of a dirtbag. Like, he's not a super good person. He's really not, especially with a lot of stuff he does in Endwalker. But like, his character arc makes sense. He has his moments where it comes to realizations, helps out where he's needed, and then he's able to get what he wanted. He had a very satisfying character arc. You could argue absolutely that it's simplistic. There is beauty in simplicity. No one. Let me rephrase that. You don't necessarily need a character with a Silmarillion worth of backstory. You don't. It can help, but you can have a character that is too in depth, and it's like, well, this character's motivations is X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and this is why. Okay, but can you tell me the story though? Right? I think there's something to be said for leaving some things to imagination, leaving some things to inference, and I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it is art, and art is subjective, right? I notoriously did not like the Witness's reveal in regards to what the Witness was as a conglomeration of an entire race, right? I wasn't super into that. I think, and thus calling it correctly, of like, if we need to destroy the Witness, this was back in Lightfall, where, yeah, we need to cause discord within the Witness and then kind of sever those parts, right? Thus decreasing overall power. It's simplistic. Did it work? Yeah, I would say so. I think the final excision activity was great. It's kind of awful getting into those now. Like I tried doing it at like, I think it was like 6 o'clock this morning. The DCs and the connectivity are weird, but I think that has to do with, like we discussed earlier, in regard to having to load so many Guardians in at once and each of them having to load in their own emotes. I think there's a coding conflict there. But just because it's simplistic doesn't necessarily equate to bad. And I think that, I don't know, I want to see where he goes with this.
Like the stakes, established by insisting upon them. Endless verbal reminders that if you don't stop the current thing, the world's going to explode. But even if they tried to make you believe that, they couldn't follow through, because a live service like this demands stability. It doesn't
in defense of Osiris, because I was actually fairly critical of him when Lightfall launched, contextually, we do have to look at Osiris was asleep for, what, a year because of Savathun, and then Osiris gets up, and then he has to do Spire of Stars, and he's commenting through that entire thing, right? And then Lightfall happens. Dude literally just woke up, had to hit the ground running. And remember, he doesn't have Sagira anymore. He is mortal for all intents and purposes, is he not? Like, I think that the criticism was definitely widespread, and I was part of that in regards to Osiris feeling incredibly whiny. But when you look at, like, okay, contextually what's going on, it did make sense. So I will have to defend Osiris there, because imagine if you were asleep for, I don't know, a year, and you still had your job, right? We're going really like left field with this, and then you get to work and you're like, oh my god, there is so much I have to do. Why are you here? Why is that person not here anymore? Why did they leave that on my desk? Why did they not do this? Why are they not following these policies? Right? Those kind of things. Now crank it up to 11 because Witness Veil shenanigans, right? Callus actively invading Neomuna.
Like to change. And we've gotten used to that now. We know that the potential for whatever we face to make something happen is limited. We know the Traveler will be safe and the city will not be lost. We lose an ally. The helm drops out of the sky. But you don't believe in stakes beyond the small. The plots. Made mostly of contrived complications. Here's the thing you need to do. But to do that, first, shoot the 3 sacred fuckos in the 3 sacred caves. Why? Because I said a bunch of big fantasy words like the Veil and the Radial Mast. Okay? Don't make me say another one. Don't make me say fucking paracausal, because I will. Now go on, get moving. The storytelling, so primitive. Even now, we jolt from pre-rendered CGI cutscenes that look nothing like the game itself, to ink block cutscenes, to in-game conversations, to text boxes appearing next to the in-game characters, and you're just supposed to buy into the idea that it's a continuous experience. Through the unusual mechanics of the dungeons and the raids, Destiny is able to make the arcane character of its world something you can actually experience through play. The only time the Vex have ever been intimidating is in the Vault of Glass, where you're forced to hide from the Gorgons stalking the depths of the maze, waiting.
I mean, the Gorgons were more annoying than anything. I don't know. The Vex, what is it, Glassway, when the Wyverns were first introduced with the double Hydra. I don't know. That was pretty intimidating. I don't know. Garden is an interesting one because I feel like Garden's impact might be marred with certain bugs. I know that Witherhoard came out after Garden went live. I don't actually know in reference to when Witherhoard came out versus when Garden of Salvation came out, but there was a large bug for a hot minute No, it wasn't a hot minute. There was a bug where you were able to just cheese the final boss because something 6 stacks of Witherhoard deletes health bar. Really funny to watch. Definitely not good for game balance. There's a reason to fix that. As well as when I ran Garden back in Season of Arrivals, like buff stacking was a thing, right? You could stack Well of Radiant on a bubble, and so you would drop a Well in the front, bubble in the back, go back into the bubble, and then come forward in Well to shoot boss, right? But especially with the power level today, you understand why they can't do certain things like that. Maybe this is a D1ism though. Maybe it's D1 Gorgons. Maybe it's because it does hold a certain place. Maybe it's because of power creep. Maybe it's because people have had a decade to to understand that we have Chad route in D2 now as well. So that also affects me, right? I'm sure going back to D1 and having to do Gorgons is going to be a wild experience. We've only seen a single combat unit so far. Exactly. So, I mean, effectively, Gratz, we have peasants and farmers, right? And that's all we've been fighting. So, contextually, we do have to remember that. We do have to understand that the Vex so far are not combat units. They're just serfs, peasants, whatever, right? The first combat unit, the lowest of the low, has been the Wyvern. So there is absolutely upward mobility. And I think that, sure, the Soul Divisive was a huge plot point, right? Especially in D1 Year 1, because you got to the Heart of Black Garden, right? And then the Soul Divisive going on throughout the raids like Garden of Salvation going through, right? I don't think it was a super Vex-centric story, though. I think it's much more been focused on the Taken, at least from my limited play experience, starting in Season of Arrivals, taking breaks every here and there, not playing D1. I feel it's been a Taken-centric story. Right now in Act 3 Heresy, we do have shenanigans with Oryx, or rather the Navigator, Cabal, Keitel, right? We just have Savathun in the game, just chilling. During Excision, you could just see Savathun there. Despite I remember just hearing about Savathun this, Savathun that, but it beat her being intangible, right? We do also have threats like Nezarec, which dude is effectively immortal. And even that, because I was trying to do the first encounter of Ruder Nightmares last night on Ironic. I was trying to see if I could do it solo. Just too much incoming damage for me right now. While I'm running, but dude is actively immortal. You enter the raid and he's just like, good, you've arrived. Like, he's entertained that you've arrived. Sure, we can, I think, go from the angle of like, oh yeah, he's excited to see his challenge met, right? But is he also not excited that even if he loses, his memory will remain? He is effectively immortal because the Guardians are the one that fought him. How do you get rid of a cognito hazard? What is it? A meta hazard? Because as long as somebody remembers him, he will still live in some capacity. He is still around. Is he necessarily going to be the witness? No, I don't think so. But he could come back, and he could come back as a recurring character. Absolutely. The way to get rid of a cognito hazard like that is for nobody to remember him. But if people, especially immortals like the Guardian, remember him, he is solidified immortality ad infinitum, right?
To eat their victim from time. The Abyss makes darkness a physical weight that slows your frantic dash from light to light while a chattering horde screams from the shadows, following only seconds behind. It feels to play about what I imagined when I first looked into the Hellmouth. Even the more creatively restricted boss encounters were mostly able to deliver on the otherworldliness of these beings by asking the non-obvious of you. Oftentimes an almost esoteric ritual is practiced to access the damage phase. The world never seems larger, stranger, its premises never more convincing than they are when they are expressed through gameplay. It was always going to be difficult to tell a story about paracausal forces and minds beyond comprehension through the medium of an FPS MMO, because whenever we got close to those things, we would need to be able to shoot them, and for that to happen, they would need to be reduced to a form that could be shot. The darkness, this paracausal entity, would need a head for damage phases and a mouth to scream no. I mean, it's not like Bungie had to make it look like that. You know, sticking anime eyes and a monobrow and a spunk splash wouldn't have been my first choice, but the point is, it was never going to feel quite right to defeat a being like that with a gun. So the fact that they even got close is remarkable, and that's made very clear when there's nothing but a gun. Didn't feel right at all to kill Courier in a seasonal mission, or the worm god Zol at the end of a strike.
I know that's been a big criticism in regards to Zol. Zol is technically still around. We were talking about this the other day on stream because I was streaming Act 3 Heresy's debut. Right, I was when it went live. I was streaming it, and we were talking about like Zol. So Zol technically, yes, is ganked at the end of the Mars strike, which is no longer in the game. However, he is taken and is still technically in the Whisper mission. As far as I'm aware, taken Zal in some way, shape, or form does still exist. So that is still a potential plot. They've also been wrapping up a lot of things, right? I'm glad I kind of missed most of Revenant, because I thought Kel's Fall was a little... I didn't like the difficulty. It really felt like the Legendary version was just a GM with less cover, personally, to me. I'm also mid AF at the game, to be fair, so keep that in your consideration. Zol, I don't know. I this is definitely a big criticism that I've heard. Not just taken primarily Hive. However, the most interesting if you think about it, because the Hive are effectively a human substitute that instead of getting the light, they got into the dark and transformed from it. Yeah, exactly. And like, I remember calling it back in. I don't remember. I think it was before the raid launched in Final Shape. But I was like, yeah, no, if we have these episodes, quote unquote, which are not, not seasons, if we did have that, I figured that people would play through Echoes, Revenant would probably be a drop-off point, and then people would come back for Heresy, because Hive seasons, Hive content generally always does well. Zal is also still a Gun Whisperer as well. That too, yeah. So there are plot points with Zal that could be extrapolated upon should the need for it arise.
Only sometimes does Destiny maintain its standard of interactive storytelling outside of dungeons and raids. And because outside dungeons and raids is most of the game, and because most people won't engage with dungeons and raids at all, there's only so much.
That's so wild to me. But then again, I have to remember I'm a raid player. I love playing raids. I love talking about this. I ran so aside from Salvations, and this was before Salvations Edge dropped, I ran every single raid in D2 except for Garden. So we're talking Root of Nightmares, Vaults of Glass, King's Fall. You ran every DSC, ran every single raid except Garden and Salvation, because time, right? I ran 7 raids in 8 hours. One of the best days. I remember having to take a break during encounter 1 of Root of Nightmares to literally eat steak. Just like, yo, look at the steak dinner downstairs. I'm going to take a break for encounter 1. You guys got this. To which they're just like, yeah, go take a break. We're fine. It was wild to just... I don't know, I'm so used to having to like run like 3 mechanics in Kingsfall on War Priest, where I'm having to like read and set first well and go after night, where I'm just like, yo, wait, they can just 5-man this? Weird. But I love it. I will absolutely raid like 100%. But I get that people don't have either the skill, don't have the desire. It just doesn't appeal to them. Maybe they're more of a Crucible or Trials of Osiris player, and you know what? That's perfectly fine and valid. I'm awful at PvP in general, especially in Destiny. So Trial, I will never get a Trials adapt.
Much the gameplay can do to help with Destiny's narrative shortcomings. And in fact, when you look at the game's normal mission content, the standard of storytelling ain't always so much lower as it is low. Not bad, but not really doing anything good, perhaps in part because of open world design. Anything that takes place in an open world environment, or that could be accessed from an open world environment, which is a lot of Destiny, can be returned to at any time. For that reason, nothing can be specific to any particular narrative moment. It's also the case that open world space probably isn't going to change very much either. It needs to be consistent, permanent, static. That's limiting. Destiny's storytelling then ranges from remarkable to remarkably flat. It was the final shape that found a way to buck the trend. The Traveler's pale heart is made of memories and feelings given form by the light, so its space can have this narrative specificity while also being permanent and unmoving in the way open worlds like to be. Another exception would be Forsaken, when we swung open the doors to the dreaming city and came upon a world fractured. One, a usual static patrol space linked by portals to the other, the Ascendant Plane, a space that could be anything Bungie wanted it to be, and they wanted it to tell the story of 2 wills at war, of 2 god queens and a dragon whose wishes came true. It was vast and so strange, and so it made you believe in the vastness and the strangeness of the beings behind it all. It did what the raids did, and it did that with space not tied to an open world. Yet, the same expansion showed us that the open world was not entirely inflexible. Every week, a consistent schedule, the kingdom changed, in every way that was practical for it to change. Music, color, skybox, what missions could be done, and as the city went about its loop, and you ventured back into the Ascendant Plane, the plot was unraveled. Interesting plotting that reflected the nature of the world. That was a rare thing. That was cool. And I'm not trying to say we should have had more things just like that. I'm certainly not saying I expected that standard consistently. I'm saying that it proved Destiny was capable of delivering large narrative arcs in interesting ways. And
oh, absolutely. The Dreaming City still does this, right? Even after events have concluded, certain events have concluded plot-wise, there is still the Dreaming City curse as far as I'm aware. I mean, sure, I might have some narrative issue with that. That's one of those I would have to delve into. I'm not the expert when it comes to Forsaken lore. Interesting stories, but sucked gameplay wise. Well, yeah, and you can have. I mean, that's maybe why they moved away from that. If there's players who didn't like it, that's probably why they moved away from it. I mean, patrol zones. Let's be real. You're not necessarily. It's not. Destiny does not necessarily equal MMO. Sure, there's MMO isms, but it's a multiplayer game, right? MMOs have instances, and sure, we do have kind of instance things, right? Where we have even in like Heresy, Revenant. We do have like certain nodes in the oh my god, Last City, right? We have nodes in the Last City where we can go into certain instances. Like you can queue up to specific instance sections of missions and stuff for plot relevant things. But a patrol zone is just that, right? Going into was it Defiance with Vexcalibur? Yeah, you had little boxes, little Vex boxes added, and you had to do a thing there to get access to the Node Avalon mission, right? Like they add things to the overworld. They do things that are progressive with the overworld. You have Cabal being replaced by Shadow Legion. We have Arms Dealer Strike that has been completely reworked at this point, right? So I mean, we have interesting things, but I think the patrol zones have always, I don't know, maybe it was different in D1. Once again, I'm coming from a strictly D2 perspective at this point in time. I mean, they feel just like that. You're just going around in an open world environment and just doing things, right? I know that the D1 loot cave was a thing, and that's what we have in Grasp of Avarice, but like in D1, Randall the Vandal, loot cave, I know those were things in the open world, but we still have events like that. So I think this criticism only extends so far to me. But then again, my reason for playing is tied to raids and dungeons, right? If I have people who can run content, I can have somebody message me and go, hey, you want to run Crota? You want to run Root of Nightmares? And I'll be like, hell yeah, I do. Now, if I have to teach, okay, that's a little different. If I have to learn, I'm going to make sure to set aside a couple, like Deepstone Crypt. I have had nothing but bad experience with Deepstone Crypt, aside from being hard carried. I have not been able to fully learn things like security. To which I know the actual like resolution to that is, hey, we have like 6 people. You want to get together and we'll just blast through some Deepstone Crypt. That way you can also learn the mechanics. Hell yeah, I do. I wasn't able to duo planets overnight. It took time to learn the encounter. It took time, and specifically an unnerfed version of Sunbracers, to have the raid group who I ran 7 raids in 8 hours with actively tell me to stop doing ad clear so fast because I was causing them issues. They could not keep up mechanically because I was killing so many Shadow Legion. That's all just building on each other, and I'm a fan of PvE. So the patrol zones have really they've been meh to me. They've been one of those that it's just been like, okay, this is open world segment. Sometimes things happen, sometimes things don't. I understand the appeal. I understand the appeal to things like the Dreaming City, especially with the rotation. But especially from a game standpoint, if from a gameplay perspective, like if the thematic versus gameplay, right? Thematically, we are fighting giant paracausal entities, like he said. Gameplay wise, we still need to take them down with. I have this gun. That's just how that works, right? So I think it's trying to meet those, and I know there's definitely modifiers from this era as well. Like, is it Oops All Screebs, the tiny Screebs that move faster? People hated that. I mean, I'll joke like, when are we getting Oops All Screebs as a modifier back? Watch people's eye twitch, but I mean, it's the joke at that point. I'm tangenting super hard on this one. I understand what's being said. I can acknowledge what's being said, and I can even empathize a little bit. Patrol zones I've never taken super seriously. And I think for me, it's why I like things, I guess, like Halo 3 and Halo Reach over Infinite. I personally didn't like the open world. Not a fan personally. I would have much preferred just mission-based structure like the prior games. But yeah, just let me queue up into content. Let me queue up into Court of Oryx. Let me queue up into exotic missions. Let me queue up into raid and or dungeon, right? Let me queue up into things and then go for it. And then obviously we do have those community things like he's mentioned. We do have things like Bife. I'm sure we can just look up the lore entries online as well, should one be so inclined to. Bife is just the household name, and he does a very, very good job at what he's doing. So as he's had its ups, it's had its downs. I think that there is a game approachable by anybody, and that's why I was an advocate for crafting, because it makes the entry for people into raiding and stuff that much easier. So there's a number of conversations that get had here.
But the flatness so common to the Destiny we got outside of dungeons and raids was not inevitable, which leaves me with the world at large. Turns out, the Traveler has an evil twin, a dark inversion. The Veil. It's the reason the Witness couldn't finish us at the first collapse, it's the way he'll do it this time. And it was introduced out of nowhere, and not once explained during the story it was invented to excuse, but the characters acted like all of this was obvious, which caused a bit of an outrage. So, a few months later, randomly and without context, we got an ink block cutscene that explained the Veil and the true nature of the darkness. It was the most important revelation there had ever been, and it was an ink block cutscene that was dropped randomly and without context. It's never felt like there's been a plan. The overarching plot of the Destiny saga has simply meandered towards an end, with some things focused on and others forgotten. There's no politics in the Lost City anymore. The factions have disappeared. The Warminds turned out to be one Warmind. They also turned out to be pointless. And complexity within the ranks of the Cabal or the Vex is no longer discussed. The scale has shrunk. With it, complexity and nuance. Qualities of this world that made it so interesting. But then consider the threat. The Vex should be the most significant threat we've ever faced. I know that, and I used to believe it too. It was easy then, because I had no evidence to the contrary. Now, things have changed, by which I mean nothing has changed. My evidence is that the Vex have just sort of spent the last 10 years waddling about the place doing bugger all besides getting their dicks knocked off whenever Bungie needs some emergency fodder. All this time, with all this nothing, has made them feel toothless and irrelevant. And a lot of this universe could now be thought of like that. The city has had a lot of time too. When Destiny began, humanity was made to feel so small, the last flicker of a dying flame. That's not how we're made to feel anymore, in terms of art, or more tangibly, in terms of narrative. We've recovered so much of what was lost from the Golden Age, uncovered an existing Golden Age city, allied with half the known universe, and shot the other half in the face. So, it feels a bit weird that the last city is just still a pile of junk, that the original tower has not been repaired, that no one's bothered to fill in those giant fucking craters, or that we haven't expanded beyond the last city. Is there a lore reason for that? If there is, it would be really good if it was in the game. It's a further problem that not really knowing what humanity's situation actually is makes it hard to get a grip on whatever stakes could still exist, which is made even harder by our continued distance from the people of the city, or non-guardians in general. We have moved from questions to answers. We have met Destiny's imaginings and its vast horizon. We have spent 10 years watching it change and climbed a ladder for that long made from the bones of its gods. And to be honest, it wasn't that vast, or strange, or interesting, or emotional, and I don't really believe in it anymore. I felt so rarely what I hoped to feel when I was sold on this world in the stories told by the game, and too rarely did I feel anything at all. Those vast mysteries faded as the saga pushed towards close, but the answers we found did not fill the hole they left, and my willingness, back when there was nothing but worlds and lore, to see beyond what I was shown, was not often enough rewarded. And I know nothing can ever really live up to what you imagine or what you hope for. I was always going to be a little bit let down, but this wasn't just a little bit. And there's not much left. Destiny expects us to believe in a future, even with the darkness defeated. But while the world was slowly demystified as the years have gone by, it hasn't grown that much. It hasn't gotten much bigger so that the horizon might keep pace with our reach. There's not much left in the world that makes me wonder. Not much ladder left to climb, but even if there was, the trend's been set. I know I'd likely be disappointed with what I found. This isn't a world about which I think anymore. My imagination has gone silent. That's one kind of death. Perhaps some part of the flatness of Destiny's narrative content was a motivated choice. Small and simple is a lot easier to follow, and that matters, in large part because this is a multiplayer game. Multiplayer means social interaction. Social interaction is distracting as hell, which creates a powerful incentive to write simply and without subtlety, to make it easy to keep up from a distance. I wonder if this notion of being easy to follow at a distance is why Destiny's really struggled to deliver on one of its core intentions, to question the traditional association of light with good and dark with evil. Endlessly will the game say to you that that's what's happening, but it just won't give up its coveted simplicity. So the most you get is the idea that maybe we shouldn't trust the Traveler completely? Bump it down to like 95%. While Destiny continues to reward our faith in the light, and makes most things that align with or are of the darkness as evil can be. The Witness bleats in all the usual ways about how the weak deserve to die and the strong deserve to live. His top man is called Nezarec, the final god of pain. Is he just misunderstood? His final shape is supposed to tempt because it would mean the end of suffering. But in practical terms, the end of entropy is another way of saying death. His plan is to kill everything. You can see how empty all this has been when you look back on the last 10 years years and ask yourself what you've learned. Okay, so the Traveler isn't entirely altruistic, and there are some kinds of darkness that aren't inherently evil, but everything we believed at the start of Destiny 1 is basically still true. I'm guessing we also have Bungie's attempts to make their content attractive from a distance to blame for the worst expansion Destiny has ever seen. Lightfall. Everything about Lightfall is meant to be.
So before we dive into the Lightfall thing, because I do have thoughts and opinions on that, and my own conclusions I've drawn on that. I mean, he brings up things like the old tower. I mean, the old tower was, for all intents and purposes, I mean, that Gaul took care of that, did he not? And that's when we went back with 0 hour to be able to do the Outbreak Perfected thing, right? Read vaults, etc. So on one hand, yes. One hand, it would be good to have certain areas back. But on the other hand, and I was having this conversation recently, where how many people actually went to, was it Mercury where Osiris was before the content vault? And this is actually a good time to bring this up. How many people physically went to Mercury? Like, did anyone have a guess? Anyone have numbers on that? The answer is not very many. I don't know the actual number offhand, but in the discussion, it was posited that, like, yeah, there were, like, of the active player base, like a single-digit % of actually going to Mercury. So, yeah, it does make sense if there's nothing there. Well, then the answer is, well, you clearly have to innovate, add stuff there. Okay, with what dev time, right? There's a lot to unpack there, and I think that this also, I think you bring this up correctly, chat. I think that there's a paradox here of wanting to explore new frontiers, but also want the same, right? Also want the old. So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest. It wasn't even a single digit. It was around 0.75%. 0.75% of your active player base isn't even going to Mercury. To which brings up the argument of, why sunset it? Why remove the content, right? And I've had the criticism of, well, part of the content vault was to make sure that the game was a reasonable size. It's like, what, 100 and something gigabytes still now? It's back up there. And then the criticism comes down to, well, we don't actually own the game. Yes, you are correct. Destiny 2 is a live service. Much in the same way as Final Fantasy XIV. It is a live service, much like World of Warcraft, right? Much like Warframe, I'm assuming. One day, whenever that is, the servers will be unplugged. You will be unable to access that content. You have effectively purchased a license to access the product for a period of time. So, if we're gonna have that criticism, we need to make sure we're being consistent with that criticism. There are plenty of games that do that people don't have issues with. 0.75% of the player base actually going to Mercury, right? Would I like content to be in the game? Yes. Do I think that the game has plenty of content to do? Yes, especially if you're just starting out, right? Like, you're not going to have access to Whisper. You're not going to have access to, like, Vexcalibur, should you want to do a Vexcalibur build. You don't have access to Outbreak Perfected and the Catalyst, right? And those are just exotic missions, right? You still have to go through Lightfall. You still have to go through Final Shape. There is content. So I think that they've at least done an interesting job, if not a good job, keeping up with, we need to make content. Even that people are like, well, I want Leviathan back. And there's people that are just like, I really wouldn't want Leviathan back. I think Leviathan is one of those that people would want back, but then it's going to turn into much like the crafting community. Well, I got my red borders from Leviathan, or I got this from Leviathan. Why should I run Leviathan again? So you advocated for Leviathan back, and then you ran Leviathan just so many times as you wanted to, and then you said, nah, bro, I'm good. What incentive is there for a company to do that? Don't get me wrong. I hate losing stuff. I totally get where the sentiment is coming from. But we need to also be fair in the criticisms. We also need to be fair in what is being discussed. And I feel that there is an unfortunate bias in targeting, and it's probably because of the reputation the game has garnered. The community has garnered some aspects as well. I have thoughts and opinions. I'm already dragging this video out way too long. I think he's coming from a place of good faith. I understand his criticisms. There's also that paradox, that conflict of interest, like we're saying. So I think it's interesting to look at, and how some of the criticisms can be answered as far as, well, they vaulted content. Okay. Yeah, they vaulted content. How many other MMOs have done that? How many other games have done that? I don't know. I think Warframe is kind of the exception here. I'm sure there's a frame or two that they don't give out anymore. I know they've retired a program. It was the old mentor program, right? Some mentor program. Some people allegedly abused, therefore they don't do that. They still sponsor people, but that actual mentor program is now gone. I don't know. I'm very much kind of mixed on it. That being said, I'm also in the minority of players, I guess, because I will just do King's Fall because King's Fall. I will run Sunder Doctrine because Sunder Doctrine. I will run them because I like running them. And I think that's what Destiny does strongly. There is no other game quite like Destiny, as much as people will say Warframe is a second. Warframe did get rid of raids. Okay, cool. Yeah, so if Warframe got rid of raids, why do I not hear this criticism about Warframe? That's not an attack. That is okay, we're having this criticism, right? Why are we not being fair with the criticism? And if that can't be answered, maybe there's a bias or a flaw in that logic. You see where we point that out? Pretty newbie friend. I think most games, do have an issue with new players, which is why, once again, proponent of crafting. Once again, why, like, if somebody wants to raid, sure, I will teach them Root of Nightmares. I can hard carry Root of Nightmares in a lot of ways. I can't quite solo it. I can maybe low man it. I haven't tested it yet. But if someone's like, well, how do you run planets? I'm like, okay, this is what you need to know. This is what you're going to do. You're going to watch the Tom Christie video of Skeletor hates the LFG, and that's literally going to tell you most of the encounter. I will extrapolate on a few points, but that's what you're going to need to know. I will go through and teach someone if they show both the drive and the skill, right? If someone has the drive, but is flubbing their bait and switch combo, and they're hitting maybe 600,000 across 3 damage phases, okay. You might want to go back to, like, campaign. You might want to learn a little bit more how the game functions before, right? But even then, if you have the skill, but someone flubs, say, maybe they bring the planet to the wrong point, and there's like, oh, this isn't worth my time anymore, and it's a single wipe, and they just leave. Okay, clearly you have the skill, but you don't have the drive. One of the funniest raid experiences I've ever had is seeing both sides of the hardcore community. The super uber toxic... it was Vault of Glass that did an LFG. And they effectively do the entire raid. One of them was super uber toxic side of like, wow, can't even do this. The other was like super legit side, even being, I'm pretty sure they'd run into each other in LFGs before, where he's just kind of just like, yeah, whatever to the other guy. And he's just doing the safe spot up on top right. And he's going through the encounter. It was super interesting to watch the polarized high-end content, or high-end runners. It was very cool to watch. So... in short, yeah, I think that I can agree with Destiny 2 being hostile in a lot of ways towards new players. It's why I have love systems and why I've tried to be an advocate for that, and for helping new players into it to give people that in, because I've had to spend my 7-hour runs in Garden of Salvation. I've had to sit there in LFG, sitting in raids, seeing other people do. I've had to sit in the one Eater of World raid that I did, which is a glorified strike. I had to sit there doing leapfrog pads for 20 minutes. I've had to do it. Other people haven't quite had those experiences. So I hit a certain level of play because I've had to do certain things, but I also fall short, and that's why I love running with people better than me. It's why I love running with people who can solo mechanics and stuff, because it still shows that I have a lot of growth to do. I absolutely would love to hit that top 2, top 1% of raiders, but that is a challenge. That is a mountain to surmount. So... yeah, a lot of thoughts there, a lot of vomit that I've thrown out there. But I'm clearly passionate about the game. I have disagreements and I have agreements so far. Lightfall is going to be the interesting one. I went in initially pretty sour on it, but having to really mull it over, think on it, I think that having Lightfall separate from Final Shape was inherently, at the end of the day, a good thing, because we would have had to start cutting stuff. And I do agree with that statement. We would have had to cut the entire most of the Callus and the Witness arc. Well, Callus was dealt with in Season of the Haunted. I'll have to give you the benefit of the doubt. I personally didn't play Season of the Haunted. I didn't get back until Seraph. I apologize. I don't have the context for that. And I'm sure there could be a debate in regards to Callus and his role in Season of the Haunted, in Duality as well, which I have run. I still need to run. I still need to get a Heart Shadow. But like, I think at the end of the day, I think I did enjoy Lightfall. I think as much as there were issues, as much server issues that popped up, as many issues that kind of cropped up, I think that at the end of the day, I think Lightfall was a good decision in certain aspects because we were able to flesh out certain things rather than go from Season of the Seraph into the Portal and the Witness into Final Shape. Like, cut out the entirety of Season of the Season of the Witch, Season of the Deep, which we did get Ghost of the Deep as a dungeon in, by the way, and then cut out Season of Defiance. Cut out all 4 of those and all the story from them. Maybe give it a cliff note and a lore tab, and then just try to string Seraph into Final Shape. I don't think it works.
Fun. It's 80s schlock, which is fantastic when you're trying to sell an expansion, but somewhat challenging when you're writing the penultimate chapter to the battle for the fate of the universe. The darkness had come. The Traveler was at knife point. This was bigger than Oryx, bigger than Riven or Savathûn. But Lightfall was irreverent. You didn't believe the danger because you couldn't feel it. Osiris was forced to relentlessly insist upon the stakes, because if he hadn't, it would have been easy to forget why you were there to begin with. But let's say Lightfall had come out when the overarching narrative stakes were low. One problem would still exist. Doesn't really feel like Destiny, does it? It's not mythic sci-fi, it's just sci-fi. The tone isn't a mix of dread and hope, it's largely frivolous. But really, that's the surface. What makes Lightfall feel out of place is the fact that it feels like the art is the product of influences outside Destiny's universe. In an immersive setting, it should be easy to explain the art using the setting. Europa can be explained rationally. A science and a history made this place. On the other hand, Arkham Asylum can't very well be explained rationally, but it can be explained expressionistically. It's an expression of the characteristics of Arkham Asylum. Now, how do we explain Lightfall? The 80s stuff, where does that come from? Why does Neomuna look like that? Why the B-movie aesthetics in the story? Why does Nimbus talk like a 21st century teenager? The answer is, because Lightfall is the fun expansion. The art seems to come, in large part, from something outside the confines of Destiny's universe.
Lightfall is the fun expansion. There is some pretty tragic stuff that happened in Lightfall. Death of Rohan, as odd as it sat with me, as odd as it sits with a lot of people, that happened. Reveal of Oryx. Oryx's body being in Ghost of the Deep. I have to think about this for a minute. Whole Riven Egg thing. I feel there were absolutely things. I think we're discussing very specifically the story of Lightfall. We're not going to rehash the whole Osiris literally waking up thing again. I think that, yeah, it felt kind of weird. It felt even shorter in a lot of aspects. About mission like 6 to 7 to go into the finale felt like it went pretty quick. But campaigns, as far as I'm aware, since Beyond Light, Witch Queen, Lightfall, even Final Shape, they've been those 8 missions, right? And then they've been supplemented by overworld things, strikes, etc. So, It'll come out at the same time as Cyberpunk, any chance? I'd have to have somebody cite the release date on that.
And that's what feels wrong, that here the world feels made for its audience instead of its inhabitants.
Good point. Nimbus was young, literally just started their job, was learning the ropes, never fought anything seriously before, and the Vex and Cabal just arrived when we got there. Right. More context that I feel benefits a lot of people. And you can, I think, absolutely argue how a good story can deliver its content. I mean, even then, like, people clearly love Dark Souls. I've been playing Dark Souls 3 again. I've loved playing Dark Souls 3. And, like, yeah, you can get fragmented bits of script about the Ring City, about Filianor. You can get Gale, right? You can get fragmented bits of lore from that, and you have to piece it together. But that's also part of the medium. And I think you could maybe make a commentary in regards to confusion of the medium, how to relay things, how not to relay things, because clearly there is an issue, as mentioned in the video, with trying to access lore cards, right? Especially from D1. And that's why we have community members like Bife and stuff. There is an argument for letting players infer and learn about a game, but then there's also, how do you do that effectively? And if you rely on your player base to do it all for you, I'm going somewhere with this. I'm sorry. I'm really trying. We are an hour into this 40-minute reaction. I think that if you rely on your community to do the heavy lifting for you, and suddenly the community isn't there, or the community is unable or unwilling to, does your storytelling fall flat? I think that's an issue. I think that, yeah, would be an issue. I think reasonably so. I personally have not really read the lore cards. I know for me, if I'm not able to get lore entries, I kind of just ignore them. I'm just like, I'm sure there's things from like not only Red War, but like other expansions that no longer in the game. I'm pretty sure there's like lore entries of Curse of Osiris that, as far as I'm aware, I cannot finish. And yeah, I mean, that kind of puts a damper on things. But once again, Google does exist, feeding back into this argument of something. How do you divulge your lore, especially if you're trying to be very, like, not on the nose about it, but having to explore the world? Once again, the clear thing was exploration, being able to explore new frontiers and stuff like that, leading into a paradox conflict of interest in regards to wanting things given, but, like, not willing to seek it out. Like, I think mix of emotions, like you mentioned earlier, is absolutely a thing here.
Which it is, of course, but you want to be able to forget that. Lightfall is the worst this has ever been. It is an exception, and yet it is not the only reason that Destiny's artistic identity has lost a certain amount of focus.
Okay.
Tess S. Everis. I'm so tired of Tess shit in Everis. Because now the game is fucking filled to the brim with overwrought baubles meant specifically to look unlike what everyone else is wearing, to look more than the common wear. And it does, but it always looks less than Destiny. The problem not being that Guardians aren't the arcane outlaws they used to be, but that they can no longer really be described as anything other than space heroes, I guess. And since everyone gets some Eververse content free, and everyone's likely to use what they get, we find ourselves surrounded by ships and sparrows and armor and effects so removed from Destiny's baseline that Destiny's baseline has almost disappeared. Things that don't look like they belong in this universe have become the norm. Emotes serve a powerful social design purpose. Finishers have a mechanical role. Both have reason to be here, and neither had to look out of place in Destiny, but they often do, because Bungie wants people to buy them. Transmat effects and ghost projections, however, were always going to look a bit weird, but they're here because Bungie wanted more types of thing to sell. Tess has spread her corporate herpes all over the tower for the past 8 years, and it has corroded Destiny's identity like an acid. But what if it's also gotten a little bit worse? Now that's a tricky one, because depending on the time, Destiny might have been punching at all-time highs. Savathun's throne world, the light-drenched Hive Queen's dream cathedral, where the Hive at their most demonic contrasts with that same architecture shaped into something holy, symmetrical, beaming white, which highlights for our horror the acceptance of their evil into the light. Or the Traveler's Pale Heart, which is constantly unique, constantly changing, and rich with specific narrative meaning. Yeah, when the glazers and haters of Destiny both share the same praise of the art team and bring it up like a tick, they ain't wrong. But not all of the new stuff is quite this good. Like Neomuna, it's pretty, but Destiny is supposed to be more than just that. As much as sin is the fact that it's completely generic. It's a sci-fi city with an 80s vibe. And that's it. We see that it's powered in part by...
Was that not the point of Neomuna, though? I distinctly remember, I don't know if it was an interview or if it was some kind of like disclosure by a gaming news outlet. Is that not the intent of Neomuna? Was that not the intent that was stated to be the Lightfall campaign of being an 80s action movie? Like, sure, having to hit the monster energy can, the strand things to progress kind of sucked in certain ways. But like, was that not the intent? I don't know. It feels like what do you call it? It feels like criticizing going to a taco place and then complaining that they don't have burgers or that they don't have pizza. Have you considered that it's a taco place? If that makes sense. I want to go back and explore that city. Neomuna is interesting. I think that there was a betrayal of expectations in a way because of the trailer going into what we got with Neomuna, and especially just random holograms of people being around rather than actual, city of bustling people. I think that there was a betrayal of expectations, but like, I don't know, the strand swinging as well. Buildings weren't heavy enough to really kind of support that in a lot of aspects. Neomuna's interesting. And I mean, to be fair, it's like, well, we haven't gone back there. When's the last time you went back to Neomuna? It's like they kind of do that. Like, when's the last time you had to go back to, Savathun's Throne World? When's the last time you had to go back to Europa? Sure, they kind of throw it in with activities every now and again, right? But like, once again, 0.75% of active players, not total players, active players going to Mercury, right? Like, that just happens. That's how the game functions. And yeah, absolutely, Neomuna was closed off, so it never had the chance to grow, and they kept themselves hidden from the universe. Yeah, Neomuna was a closed off city. It was closed off. So they kind of have this weird, like like entering an abandoned tomb, right? That kind of thing, and how like you have this abandoned city underground that's been preserved in X, Y, and Z ways for a number of years. It's the same concept. So I think there is that as well. When they introduced the Reverse Second D, when a lot of people said it was a slippery slope and I was more of a vertical cliff. I'm fine with the expression. I think the wings have been interesting, especially because it's like a 12-hour buff. When you buy it and you just have to reclaim it from collections. I think it's interesting. Sure, it can get annoying at times, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, I also just don't care. I also am just biased because I have my Crota set. That's what I wanted. I wanted my Warlock Crota set, and I rock it super hard. So I can see the criticisms, and I think I can get behind some of the criticisms with Eververse. To me, it's a non-issue. The issue is literally, can you run the raid? Can you run the content? You literally said you knew what to do in Crotas. Why have you wiped on Lanterns 3 times? Like, do you understand how Chalice works? That's more my concern, I guess.
Neptune's wins, that's pretty cool. And that the population is digital, but that's only used as an excuse to avoid having to render them. And it's not like they didn't have a decent source of inspiration. Not only is it set in the Destiny universe, it's set, as it clearly knows, on Neptune. A planet as dark and violent and lonely and large and as beautiful as that. The problem with being generic is that it makes the world expected, and one of the best things about Destiny is discovery. The word Bungie used to use was adventure, but adventure doesn't work if you know where you're going and what you'll see on the way. Take Europa. Unlike Neomuna, I really like Europa. Its biggest problem is probably just being a little underbaked, but it does share with Neomuna the problem of being expected. It's just Europa. It's made out of ice. There are also some glaciers, some snow, and some frozen water. But Venus? Man, that was not what I expected. The Traveler was such a powerful creative tool. Nowhere it touched was forced to be usual, and Venus kept itself unusual as we pressed past the Ishtar Collective and found ourselves in the regions of the Vex, just like we do on Europa. Difference being, these are as usual as Vex structures can be, and on Venus, there was that. A great big fucking question towering above the surface. Other difference being that on Venus, the Vex were new. On Europa, they're not. That's a big privilege to lose, and it means we need to see something different. Bad? Never. Not even close. But we're not talking about the difference between good and bad. We're not even talking about something I don't like. We're talking about something I do like, that I used to like.
Is that a level 2 Guardian, or rank 2 Guardian? Oh my god. Dude, it's always funny seeing people who are like below 5. Like sometimes you run across the odd Guardian rank 1 and you're like, oh my god, I found a unicorn. It's so funny to me.
Which brings me to the moon. On the surface, it's just the moon, right? Expected. Well, aside from the fact that this one structure is more interesting than anything on the outside of Europa, the answer to that is no.
At Bungie, we really believe that mystery and adventure begin at the intersection of the expected and the unexpected.
Sure, makes sense. We also did have the Hellmouth, did we not? Sure, I guess technically Lunar Cave, right? But we did have things like the Hellmouth. I know in Destiny 2 we have, I don't know if D1 has it, Altars of Sorrow. We have that as well. Pyramid Ship as well. We have the Pyramid Ship above Altars of Sorrow. I don't know if that's in 1 or not. 1 is going to be weird to play through for me.
At places in the world where strong visual themes collide, where the familiar meets the strange.
So yes, the moon would be usual, but then it would crack, peel apart. A
Yeah.
pale green light would seep up from below, and eventually your journey would take you spinning down a plug hole, a gaping abyss, the Hellmouth. The moon's great big fucking question, and it's so damn good at being a question. Fogged, dark, and vast. What's at the bottom? How far does it go? Its promise of descent, darkness, trapped things. It arrests the imagination. It begs for discovery. This vast contrast of the expected and the alien made both the more pronounced. That was a really neat trick. That made it hard to forget. Compare the Hellmouth to the Red Keep. Both of them look metal as fuck, and both do a fantastic job of making you want to go there. Instead of don't you want to see what's at the bottom, it's don't you want to get to the top. But there's one more thing. The Hellmouth is a mystery. It's alien, unlike anything we've ever seen. The Keep is a keep. I want to get inside, but I know what I'll find. We've got keeps on Earth, which, contrary to its intent, makes it less intimidating than anywhere else on the moon. That's the problem with the art of Shadowkeep. It misunderstands that what made the moon unsettling was also what made it interesting. Its strangeness, the unknown. There are literal ghosts now, and screams. And they even threw a couple bricks at the violins for that classic horror sound. But now we know what's there. Now we're less lonely. We go on nightmare hunts, but we're exclusively hunting monsters we've already fought in the first game. They built their horror-themed campaign exclusively out of the familiar, and the result is an expansion that completely undermines what they were trying to double down on. Then look at the colors. Destiny chose its colors with purpose, autumnal and faded to present a feeling of history, of weatheredness, to make its world seem ancient and in that sense vast, to make the collapse visible and its effects clear, to help the weapons and armor feel like the stuff of legend. Destiny 2 chooses differently. Its colors are much bolder, things stand out a lot more, but something was lost in the process. I do think it's made the world feel smaller, in the sense that it doesn't make its age as clear, and I wonder if that was the right move, particularly for an expansion meant to host feelings of fear. Context can make things worse too. The EDZ.
I think that's interesting to think about. I actually didn't know that things got brighter. I think that's actually a really interesting point, and I really want to know what their design philosophy on doing that was.
Is small and plain, and there's not really anything interesting about it, but that was the right feeling for the Red War. You had been made small. You were cut off from the mythic grandeur of Destiny, but you're not supposed to feel that way anymore, so where does that leave the EDZ? It's kind of boring. I think I've made my point. I fell in love with the fiction of Destiny. It was beautiful and thoughtful, and it made me wonder. Now, it's a bit less beautiful and a lot less thoughtful, and it barely makes me wonder at all.
I actually really liked the conclusion with Aramis and Mithrax, especially because Nezarec was definitely taking over Mithrax. I actually kind of like that. I think it was, I don't know. I think it's because maybe you could argue something in design philosophy with the theming has made it kind of lose its identity, because, like, what was it? Revenant was supposed to be effectively hunting vampires, right? Hunting vampire scorn. How do you gank? I always forget his name. The big bad of Revenant. I always forget his name. The necromancer. I mean, do you not stab effectively a stake through him, right? A stake with the paracausal serum, right? I mean, it's interesting. Fickrel, thank you. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think that it's cool that they're... It's probably because I haven't played D1. And I think that's where a lot of people are coming from. In the evolution of the game, we do have the ability to focus on certain things, right? We have the ability to focus on, specifically after the Witness is done, because the Witness arc needed to conclude at some point, let's be real. But we have the ability to do those, a vampire hunt episode, right? We have the ability to do a season focused on the Hive Heresy, right? Like, we have things we can focus on and kind of have their own self-contained story on, which I think does actually benefit some people, because if you're like, well, I don't know, hunting Fickrel, Vampire Scorn, I mean, it seems kind of neat, but it's a hard pass for me, especially if you're like, don't necessarily like the tonic system. Sure, I mean, you have the ability to pass on the episode. You do have the ability to do that. And I think a lot of people definitely played through Echoes to a certain point, and then they kind of maybe started on Revenant, and then they kind of fell off. And then a lot of people came back in with Heresy. So I think that it's interesting that they're able to kind of take a thing, whether they're, South Park, Family Guy, manatees, and with ball, whatever, right? The meme. Like, what are we doing for this next episode? Oh, we're gonna have the manatee decide whether they're gonna do that or I don't know. It's interesting that each of them is thematic, I would say. It makes it feel a little disconnected and disjointed in certain aspects, right? Because it's like, well, we just dealt with this whole, I literally forget her name, Maya Sundaresh arc, and then we went, now we're dealing with Revenant. But in the overall arcing, you also narratively understand that we are concluding a lot of plot points, right? How many times in a Bife video have we talked about Fickrel still being out there, right? We've clearly addressed Fickrel. I don't necessarily know much about Maya Sundaresh and discourse in regards to the Vex and that, but I mean, that plot point for all intents and purposes kind of resolved. She's still kind of around as far as I'm aware. She could crop back up again, but I mean, that's the thing. Depending on how Heresy goes, I mean, we are wrapping up Oryx, going back into Lightfall, right? If we were Miss Lightfall, Miss Goes to the Deep, right? Well, we would know Oryx's body is still around. But knowing Oryx's body is still around, we were going into containing the Navigator at this point in time. I think that it's interesting. I think that it's one of those in the micro, you see how they're kind of like disjointed and disconnected from each other in certain aspects and how they're thematic. But in the macro, subtly, you're able to see certain things like, yeah, okay, they're at this point in time in a post-Final Shape story setting, They are wrapping up a lot of those loose threads. They're kind of doing like maintenance pruning a lot of that to, I would argue, prepare for whatever is going to come next. Because remember, like, Sony did acquire Destiny 2, did they not? That's a lot of money to spend on something. And they're just going to do what? Collabs with Star Wars? Collabs with D&D? Like, they're just going to do collabs with the Eververse? You're telling me that Sony has zero plans for whatever's going to come with Destiny? I feel like we're wrapping up Souls, the main locale of the game. Not that we'll be back, but that's not what we're going to say. I mean, Aramis is already effed off, has she not? I think that would lead into the definition of a frontier, right? So I think that we are leading into something. And I think that it's kind of like what I'm saying with Dawn Trail right now. A lot of people are not super happy with Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail. I think that once we have the full scope, once we go through like 7.5, 7.55, I feel that we're going to have a lot of people look back on Dawn Trail a little better. It's because the story is still developing. It's because there's still stuff coming out. People are going to make snap judgments, snap decisions. People have heard my hot takes on Destiny. People have heard my hot takes on 14. People have heard my hot takes on a number of games, right? But I do have to give it some grace if it's still a developing story. Can I say that certain story elements should have been better? Yeah, like in Dawn Trail specifically. Why did Bakul Jaja get off scot-free from releasing Vale Garmanda? Been very critical on that point. It doesn't make sense. Why did that man not go to prison? At least for a little bit, right? Yeah, he had his redemption arc, don't get me wrong. But I think certain narrative things like that were kind of missed, right? Destiny-wise, I mean, sure. In 10 campaign missions instead of 8 campaign missions, sure. Maybe. But, like, I'd really have to delve in. That's one of those I'd have to sit down and I'd have to really kind of hash out and discuss it. And even then, right, I've had criticisms that I feel have been proven to be either incorrect, proven to be made in bad faith, because, yeah, once again, had issues with Osiris and Lightfall. Hi, do you know Osiris is doing this because of these reasons? Oh, actually, no, that is a good point you brought up. Thanks for letting me know that. And I take that into consideration and reflect on my opinion on hot sauce. Hot sauce, good.
Sometimes the spark came back. Sometimes I got what I hoped for. Some parts of Destiny 2 are amazing, but most of the time, it isn't. Most of the time, it's something I like, not something I love. And that's really all I'm here to say, that I don't love a thing I used to love that much. And goddamn, does it hurt. If this were a critique of the state of the game, I would talk about how it has taken an excruciatingly long time for Destiny to make significant gameplay improvements. The build crafting is better than ever, so are the dungeons and the raids, but in comparison to most games with loot in it, Destiny's non-exotic loot still isn't that interesting. And I would
I'm gonna need that is something I would like to have substantiated. I feel like if we're talking about, I don't know, insert random seasonal thing that everyone forgets about, sure. Did we not just have Kyranos in the Guardian games with Classy Contender? With, like, what is the role I got? Overflow, Eddy Current, and I didn't get Rolling Storm on mine. Eddy Current and Killing Tally, I think, something like that. No, Jolting Feedback. Eddy Current and Jolting Feedback in slot 4. I absolutely agree. Coming from Season of Arrivals, where as a Warlock, what did you run? As a Warlock, you ran Well of Radiance. I don't remember if Chaos Reach was good. You certainly didn't run Tickle Fingers. Why would you run the funny Solar Blade? Why would you ever run that? Except in PvP. To be fair, I don't know if that's still actually useful outside of PvP personally. Sure it is. I haven't really had enough experience with it. So, yeah, like what'd you play as Warlock? Those. What did you play as Hunter? You played Golden Gun. Okay, what if I wanted to play Arc Staff? Sure, I guess in base you could still unlock Gaul. There were things that you just played in Season of Arrivals. What was the reprisal weapon list? Mountaintop, Recluse, Hammerhead. There were 2 others as well. Those are the 5 weapons you needed. You literally didn't need anything else. The game is in a much healthier state than it was. And then we've had a whole discussion in regards to how Destiny is technically a perma-legal format like Yu-Gi-Oh!, but it uses rotations like Magic the Gathering with the seasons, where you have trace rifles that are busted in Heresy, right? Episode Heresy. Trace rifles are just absolutely insane. I love them. And that's the other thing with loot as well, is that, sure, you can have a trace, right? Like Cold Heart back in Arrivals. I don't remember anyone using Cold Heart I was playing with personally. Now Cold Heart is like, hey, Chaos Reach, go burr. Like, sure, and some things have gotten worked, right? Talking about War Mines earlier, War Mine cells have been removed from the game. I know a lot of people complained about it, but that's on the explanation of War Mine cells were kind of dumb. Like, they were kind of OP. So that would be strictly a balancing thing. Use Cold Heart and Leviathan. Okay, see, and that's the thing. It's people I could have been playing with and other. If they were used in raids, then it makes more sense. But we're in an age of Destiny where if you play into the season, like right now, Episode Heresy, yeah, you're with Arc, you're playing in with Cold Heart, you're, I'm getting Chaos Reach almost back to back to back, right? I know people have got it back to back to back to back to back, and it's insane in terms of damage. 13 million in Court of Blades when my next two are like 1 and 2 million respectively. Really funny. So the thing to understand is, like, sure, trace rifles are busted now, but that doesn't mean that, like, next episode or in Frontiers, right? Maybe we get something along the lines of pulse rifles get a huge nutty buff, or SMGs get a nutty buff, right? SMGs get something that or episode artifact perks, whatever. It's planning ahead, right? So yeah, you can. Oh, I have a submachine gun with destabilizing rounds and repulsor brace, but I also have swashbuckler in there as well. Okay, is it necessarily good right now? Maybe. But could it be better later? Sure. And that's the thing about loot, is you sometimes have to think ahead on that. You can get a roll, you can get Apex Predator, Last Wish rocket launcher, right? And you could be like, well, when Bipod launched, right? Well, this thing gets Bipod, but Bipod's just not where I want it to be. Why are we not using explosive light? Why are we not using bait and switch? And then Bipod gets its buff, and people are like, oh, that Bipod though, looking kind of peak. So I think loot is one of those interesting things, and I think enough of it drops at this point. Personally, once again, I was a fan of crafting. I still am a fan of crafting. I'm a proponent of crafting. I think anyone worth their weight that plays the game will run the content, even if there's no rewards to be gained from it. I've run Root of Nightmares somewhat 50 times on my raid report. I would have to pull it up, right? But, like, I'm not getting red borders from it anymore. If I wanted anything else from the raid, I would have to do Master to get the Adepts. I will run Root of Nightmares because I enjoy Root of Nightmares. I will run Vault of Glass because I enjoy Vault of Glass. I will run Kingsfall because I enjoy running Kingsfall. It's not necessarily that I expect to get rewards from it. It's that I enjoy running the content. And I think I don't know if that's necessarily a Destiny thing as much as that's a social commentary in regard to the rat race to be the first one to get the meta-defining videos out on YouTube, to get those clicks, to get those metrics, to be able to monetize and be able to min-max every part of your life. I feel there's a greater commentary, and I don't think it's necessarily a specific Destiny issue.
Make sure to praise Bungie for having solved one of Destiny's oldest problems, content droughts, or more simply, the fact of not having anything to do. And I would go on, but those aren't the things that made me love Destiny, nor the reasons why I don't anymore. They are simply what I do or do not like about it. And if it was someone else making this video, it might be the other way round, or something else entirely. Destiny is many games to many people. It contains more genres of experience inside of it than any other game like it, such that two people can tell you they're big fans of Destiny and barely share an experience in common. It's a competitive shooter and a cooperative shooter and a campaign-driven shooter and a looter shooter and an open-world game and an MMO, each aspect canonized within the same narrative universe. The sheer breadth of Destiny has always been one of its greatest appeals. But what was truly special was not how many kinds of game it was, but what kinds of game it connected. Destiny was the first MMO to also be a AAA game, the first Halo to also be World of Warcraft, the first Call of Duty to have raids and an endgame and social spaces, the first World of Warcraft to make sense to someone driven above all by action gameplay, narrative, and immersion, or to even be playable on an Xbox or PlayStation. And likewise, it was the first Halo for Spreadsheet Jimmy and Stat Boost John. It was a bridge between two spheres of gaming, until then separated by preference and platform. Destiny was a portal to a whole new world. If anything made it attractive to the mass market, that was it. I suppose then one of the things I loved most about Destiny was always going to fade away. It was new, truly new. Nothing stays new for long. Thing is though, being this much stuff at once...
Thunderlord was in D1? Ooh. That's gonna be fun.
It is, and it always has been, one of Destiny's biggest challenges. It means compromise, in part because resources are spread thin, but also because of conflicting design goals. Simplicity takes from complexity, live service takes from narrative possibility, design for multiplayer takes from design for single player, quality, which you need to be Halo, takes from quantity, which you need to be an MMO. Immersive loot takes from interesting loot, and balancing for PvP and for PvE at the same time makes both more challenging.
I that's one of those that so from what I understand, they were trying to balance guns for both. That will inherently fail every single time. Even in things like Naruto Blazing is what I bring up because it was a gacha game that I was actually interested in before. Once again, just Bandai just kills a Naruto game. I've watched it with a CCG. I've watched it with Naruto Blazing. I might be watching with Naruto to Boruto Connections, depending if they put out more DLC packs or not. It's been wild how many times that I've been burned by Bandai in regards to killing Naruto games. Stressor there. You can't balance both. Even if you had, there was a Sasuke. I think it was a purple Sasuke. It was specifically his Hebi versus Itachi, right, where he's got his his gray vest on. But he was nutty in PvP. You had I think it was the first World Ninja World Clash, whatever, the first like event Minato. I think his main hit, he was super fast to the point he hit first and knocked whatever character he hit back in the queue. Like, if you're going to balance both PvP and PvE, don't do not do it. Have different stats for both. It's okay if you have, I don't know, say Whisper of the Worm. Let's just say Whisper of the Worm, right? Say Whisper of the Worm hits for 500,000 damage. Okay. Are you going to inflate PvP numbers to that? It doesn't quite make sense. It's fine to have Whisper of the Worm do something like, I don't know, 50 damage. Say a single headshot will kill a Guardian. Sure, that's fine. And then if Whisper of the Worm, say Field Prep Whisper of the Worm becomes somehow really oppressive, just nerf the PvP number. Don't nerf the PvE number. These inherently should be separate stats. That same Sasuke I mentioned that was able, or in the Minato, sure, they could function in the PvE side of things, doing the gacha stuff, like actually doing like actual content. But like, why? Why would you not use, like, I don't know, PvE Kaguya, Red Kaguya, who just hit things? Why would you not use the Final Valley units, right? And that's a very, like, niche way to explain it. But you can't, it's not reasonable to expect to balance everything perfectly, especially with as many guns as Destiny has. It's not reasonable to expect to balance for both PvE and PvP at the same time. Like, you can't use the same stats for both. And to which, yeah, they've been tweaking numbers differently for PvP and PvP. That's how that should work. That is 100% how that should absolutely work. It's time the same stat for some dumb reason. And that if that is the case, that will fail every single time, regardless of game. You have to balance both separately because the meta for PvP can and will be different than the meta for PvE. That, sure, you have things that, you know, mix and match between both. Like, I like using Outbreak Perfected for both PvE and PvP. But if it becomes super oppressive, it makes sense to just nerf it for whatever activity it's currently in. That just makes sense.
It means leaning toward either might harm the other. Remember when Destiny finally built a competitive environment and it ended up sterilizing the rest of the game for a year? Destiny isn't the best at almost anything it does, because it can't be, but it is the best at being all of them at once, which is why it's very easy to be attracted by Destiny, but it's also very easy to be frustrated by it. If your interests aren't spread as broadly as Destiny is, it can seem to take so long for the game to make progress. It can feel like you're paying more and more with each release to play a game that is probably worse than the relevant competition. There are so many people who felt that way. So many ways to feel it. Here's mine. Seasons fixed Destiny. They filled the gaps between expansions, lifted the
That's going to be a hot take.
content droughts that stopped the game from surviving as the MMO it wanted to be. But they also ruined Destiny for me. Seasons make major advancements to the story, but they are not like the campaigns. They're more of a content system, with loose narrativization that slightly advances week by week, and occasionally decent activities meant to be farmed. When they've done their job to be a 3-month treadmill, off they fuck. They're gone. Seasons are content, not quality. Not usually. It's rare that they have the time or the budget to tell their stories well. They're necessary, but for me, they present a difficult problem, because I'm not interested in playing a game like that. But I am invested in this story, so I can either come back for each expansion and feel like I've been left behind, or I can force myself to schedule Destiny, for fear of missing out, to flatten my interest and passion into a weekly session, the same way I schedule my chores. Destiny compromised. It was the right thing to do, and I do not blame it, but it left me behind. I couldn't care about this game like I used to anymore. The more seasons I missed, the more I felt like it was too late, and on that cycle went. Which leads me on to one of the biggest problems with modern Destiny. It's difficult to be a new player, but I'm not a new player. I am a lapsed player though, and much of what makes it hard to be a new player is also what made it a challenge for me to come back. Fact is, huge chunks of the story aren't in the game anymore. And it's not just the expansions now, it's the also-gone seasons between them. So you can either accept that you'll always be slightly behind, or watch a 5-hour sermon from Bife. Who's Crow? Well, you can still do the first mission of Forsaken and find out that he used to be a prick, assuming of course that you somehow find out that you should do that, but the season where he became Crow is gone, so it's YouTube or nothing for that. Who's Mara? Who's Kaital? Who's Hawthorne? What happened to Osiris's ghost? Who even is Osiris? What doesn't help is the way you're introduced or reintroduced to the narrative. For the most part, you aren't. Certainly not in detail. You might be forced into the first mission of the current season without context, which you can't advance if you haven't bought the season, or perhaps the first mission of the latest expansion, which in this case is the finale of the entire Light and Dark saga. You might need to start from the beginning, and that's not pretty. That's fucking Shadowkeep, which is a problem of its own. Because, you know, it's fucking Shadowkeep. There are two main menus, the main menu and the main menu. There are two main hubs, the main hub and the main hub. Not only is there an overwhelming number of different kinds of progression, ranging from commendations to engrams to artifacts, aspects, fragments, triumphs, 12,000 currencies, all stuffed into different pockets of the two main menus, no one, and this is the big part.
That is so wild. Okay, I don't know if you've seen my actual character. I don't know if you've seen my inventory. I have about 3 rows of banners. Please, I need to run raids. I need to get rid of them. It's actually interfering with getting actual items. I lost one of my cards of the 9. I lost one of them because postbox overflowed. Because I physically can't take more items. I'm literally suffering from success because I have like 3 rows of banners. It is so weird to see an inventory like this.
No one has any fucking idea what to do next. There are bounties, quests, story campaigns, Vanguard playlists, dungeons, seasonal activities. There are weekly nightfalls, onslaughts, battlegrounds, legends. What do any of these words mean? In most games, the open world sections are the basic and foundational place to be. But in Destiny, as it turns out, they're totally useless. How are you supposed to know that? No one knows what's best for them, or what they're progressing towards. To get more power? For what, the raids? What's different about the dungeons? Which dungeons are current? Gear is where things get even more troublesome. It's impossible to tell without external guidance what weapons and armor are good, or what specifically makes them good. It's important to know, more important for Destiny than for most looters, because Destiny is quite heavily driven by difficult endgame content. It's important to have a build that is good, and it is not uncommon to be kicked from LFGs for having a loadout that isn't in line with the current meta.
I mean, dude, I can't. So I've been notoriously against that philosophy. I do agree that it's kind of a dick move, 100%. Bro, I don't care if you're running Darcy. And this was before Darcy became California Snipers, right? I literally don't care if your loadout looks like hot garbage. Can you do the damage? Can you at least put out 1,000,000 damage a phase? Yeah? Why should I care how you play the game? I every time I run Root of Nightmares, my buddy he runs Arc Staff, and I've told him like, why are you running Arc Staff? Why? Like this is how this interacts with the plates. Because as soon as we step off plate 1 and we step on plate 2, that timer starts ticking because of Arc Staff. Sure, I have mechanically my disagreements with it, but I'm also not going to force him to play the game in a way that he doesn't want to, and he's still able to put out damage. So at the end of the day, why should I care? Now, if you're running meta, you could run the most meta build out there. You could be running like bait and switch. You could be running sorry, he's running Eat Stick. Sorry, he's running the throw and forget one. You could be running Cold Heart to get your super back immediately. And if you're still outputting damage underneath, you might not want to be in the raid. Like, so in terms of the new player experience, there is the attempted fix of that with the New Light quest, right? I've had it brick on me. I've had it bug on me, dude. That is, I have my issues with that. Realistically, though, you should be building your skill set. Off the bat, you should not be looking at dungeons. You should not be looking at raids. You need to go through whatever campaign is current, whatever campaign you can, right? So if it's Shadowkeep, yeah, you're gonna have to go through Shadowkeep. You are going to have to go through those, and you're going to need to build up your skill set. Because this was a conversation I had recently. Well, what about buff stacking and how buff stacking doesn't work? You know, inherently the game does not tell you that if you cast Golden Gun, that radiant is different than the Hunter Well of Radiance radiant, right? To which the counter, and I feel it was a very common sense counter, was okay, but new players aren't doing that. That is advanced buff stacking, what does and doesn't work. Generally, yeah, you should be worried about. I do Devour. I throw my funny Void Grenade. I hit them with the Graviton Lance, and it procs Devour. Cool. Grats. That's what you're dealing with. Then down the line, you can start adding things like Sever. You can start adding things like Weaken. You can add things like blinding nades from like a blinding grenade launcher and how that can interact with certain things, right? Then we're starting to get going, right? Maybe run a glaive, something like that. Like you have to build up to this. The expectation is not you're going to pick up the game, play it for 8 hours, and then we're going to run you through like King's Fall. That's not the expectation. If anything, I argue that shouldn't be the expectation because you need to build that skill set. I'm still awful in a lot of ways that I play. I have to get actually like Sherpa through GMs because I have to know. I have to be told where to stand. I have to be told what to. And yes, I can survive, absolutely. But it's one of the GMs are kind of the bane of my existence because I'm not super good at them. Which is interesting because my buddy, the same one who's the throw and forget yeet stick, is good at GMs, right? So it's this interesting thing where we can kind of back and forth between GMs and raids. So to be fair, yes, in all fairness, I do get every quest a bug for me. Like I am an exception in a lot of cases. Absolute dog shit and played since D1, and that's fine. And I think there's the expectation in this rhetoric as well that you have to do raids, that you have to do dungeons, that you have to do things. And yeah, sure, you want the loot, right? Yeah, I think Apex Predator, Bait and Switch, or even Bipod from Last Wish, hell is spicy. What, Supremacy the Sniper? Something was in like rewind rounds 4 times, something like that. You get like 64 rounds in the magazine. Like, yeah, some of these things are cool, but you don't necessarily need to. If I had to start completely fresh, I mean, reasonably, I could probably get going just from world drops pretty easily, and then you start looking at your exotics, and you start trying to build craft around that. I still run Getaway Artist, Prismatic Warlock, that strictly specs into Nova Bomb and Outbreak Perfected. And I've put out near top of team damage in things like Root of Nightmares Planets with it. It's been a couple seasons since I've had episodes since I've done that, but I would 100% do it again because, wow, it's almost like I like running content. It's almost like I will do that. And sure, we all have our defaults, right? Where it's like, yo, we've wiped on planets like 3 times. Maybe I should put away the Darcy, or maybe I'll bring out the. We'll said bring out the Anarchy. Do not bring out the Anarchy in planets, please. That sounds awful. It could work though. I could see some mad lad doing it. Or using Parasite in what do you call it? Kevin. Oh my god, what's the encounter? Keeper in Vow. What's his face? I literally forget his name. The dude you have to shoot the backpack on. We call him Kevin. Yeah, using Parasite in that. And you're just like, how did you do that much damage? Parasite, baby. Just Anarchy the whole raid. If we do a 6-man Anarchy of Root of Nightmares, I would do it. I would 100% do that. That sounds like that'd be fantastic. I'm getting sidetracked here. Like, I think, and that's the thing. Sure, I think we can absolutely argue that the path of progression isn't what it could be, and I would even say it's bad in certain aspects. Absolutely, because as it turns out, if you have a higher threshold, a higher barrier to entry for players to get in your game, you're not going to attract those new players. Yes, there should be hard content. We should have master raids. We should have Grandmaster Nightfalls. We should have hard content. But we also need to make sure that we're onboarding people to be able to do those hard. And that's why I've actually really liked Final Shapes campaign, because it literally brought in mechanics from Vow of the Disciple, right? Especially when you're going into like Legendary, and it's like, okay, I have Traveler Portal and I have Pyramid Ship. Okay. Callouts I've literally used in Vow of the Disciple. Cool. You got you have Hive, Grief, and Earth, right? Going into Sundered Doctrine, right? Okay, what's the lie here? Okay. Well, looking at this, okay, so we have Guardian, we have Kill, we have Witness, and we have Worship, right? Well, clearly the lie, it's not going to be Guardian, Worship, Witness, so clearly the answer for Encounter 1 is going to be Guardian, Kill, Witness, right? Like, and then you start intuiting those things, but you have the foundation of finally bringing in raid mechanics, like the nuts from Root of Nightmares. They brought that into Mission 1 of Final Shape, right? So now we're starting to teach players, oh, well, these are mechanics you should familiarize yourself with. That way you show up into a Riddle Nightmares and go, oh, it's the funny nut from the campaign. And you're like, yeah, okay, so we're going to do this. You have a light nut and you have a dark nut. And we're going to be crisscrossing these. So I think it onboards a lot better. I think they're being far more cognizant of that if I have to look at it from an objective standpoint. Is it still necessarily the best? No. I think there are improvements being made. And I think that people need to understand what their end game is going to be. Do you want to raid? If so, okay, you need to learn the game first. We need to figure out what your playstyle is. Right now, I'm enjoying Ark. I used to camp. I camped Solar for expansions. I camped Well for so long until I finally just dropped Well and went to Nova. And I thoroughly enjoy Void. I actually really enjoy Void, like super enjoy Void. But I feel like I cap at a certain capacity with Void, especially with my current armor stats. But then again, we have an armor rework inbound as well, so we'll see where that leads. But like, players are gonna have different play styles. Sure, certain things can not necessarily be the best depending on the season. I hear that Void Titan kind of struggles, for instance, in comparison to things like Thunder Crash, things like Strand Titan, especially with Banner, and that leads into the evolving game state. And we're on what iteration? Are we on like iteration like 5? We're on like Arc 5.0 at this point. We're on some iteration. We have a. Sure, things are the same about the class, but the class has been reworked a number of times at this point.
Before that, I suspected that Destiny had become aware of the fact that it could outsource its own tutorialization to content creators, and I said that there was an upside. Here is the downside. Content creators create content for large, stable audiences, the biggest in this case being one that takes most of their game knowledge for granted. There are like 40 guys on YouTube making daily videos on how to min-max your Guardian's sperm count, and there's a couple of videos for people who know almost nothing. But there is a vast distance between those extremes, and a million ways to be lost therein. When Destiny was new and nothing was explained, everyone was lost in the way you were lost. Today, no one is lost quite like you. It is difficult to get into Destiny. It's like putting on a wetsuit in a coffin. It's difficult to come back to Destiny. It's like putting on your Spider-Man pajamas in a coffin. And I didn't fall out of love with Destiny because of that, but it made it a lot harder for me to fall back in love with it.
I mean...
So now we can talk about the final thing. Basically, I got tired of the game screwing me over. Because of course, we didn't just give Destiny a second chance, did we? When Destiny failed, we understood. We thought Bungie were the good guys and Activision were the bad guys. When The Dark Below launched its pitiful content for $20 and called itself an expansion, we understood then too. It would be a hard road to recovery. And it took so long for Destiny to move forward an inch, but you know, the engine was bad, so what can you do? Then came the Eververse store. Now that needed some heavy-duty cope. They were going to fund free content updates. Oh right, there'll be an upside to the company making a boatload of cash in the worst way possible. Well, that's good to know. And it won't get worse, because they wouldn't do that. Hey, I was on board. Love makes you stupid. And then it all happened again with Destiny 2. XP throttling, Curse of Osiris, the fact that the game wasn't good? Forsaken? Incredible. It was Shadowkeep that broke me. This truth that Destiny was worth hoping for had become the meta-narrative of the Destiny community. It was a story we all believed in. It held us together and we used it to make sense of this or that year's failure. It told us that there was some kind of villain, something we imagined to be holding Bungie back. And if only this thing were defeated, the game would finally meet a divine potential. The baddest villain in our mythology was Activision, and after Forsaken, Bungie were going independent, so things would be good now, right? No one really knew how, and it never really made any sense. As if, with Activision gone, as well as Activision support studios, Bungie would somehow be able to make more content, figure out how to tell a story, or want less money. But that's the thing, we believed it anyway. Reality was besides the point. The point was believing in Destiny. Then, reality came. Shadowkeep dropped. It introduced free-to-play and battle passes, and a hollow, charmless campaign too short yet still stretched out, utterly uninteresting in gameplay, and mostly made of content we already had. There were
I'm going to be honest, Shadowkeep is a blur to me. I don't really have anything to comment on Shadowkeep because it's a blur.
There were a few good missions, some bangers from Michael Salvatore and the music Mandem. Mostly though, it was the moon again, often worse than it was the first time, and it costed $35. And the meta-narrative just found a new villain. It was because they were also developing free-to-play or something. Okay, that doesn't change the fact that this thing that costs a lot of money isn't very good. It was then I believed there was nothing we would not accept. I mean, there'd be some complaint, but when the next trailer dropped, it would be like nothing happened. So I felt voiceless, paralyzed, and I just stopped, looked away. When I looked back, it turned out that I was half right. The process continued without me. In the Destiny of today,
What is this emote? I don't think I've seen this. Does it actually bring you first person like this? I haven't seen this emote yet.
There are droughts of loot while the microtransaction store bursts at the seams. We can pay money for in-game advantages. That battle was lost long ago. But I think my favorite thing is the Dungeon Pass. $20, one-time payment each year. The price of some games for 2 levels of Destiny. And of course, if you just want one of the 2, sorry. And all of this is true in a game where expansions are more expensive than ever. And to keep up with the story, you'll need to pay $10 for the seasons 3 times a year, making this one of the most expensive gaming hobbies it's possible to have. How do you
Yeah, I think the buy-in is incredibly big. I mean, even games like Final Fantasy XIV and and World of Warcraft as well. When the new expansion launches, you can just buy an edition that has all the prior expansions. I do think that, and I think this has been pretty widespread in terms of rhetoric. I think if Destiny were to go to a model where, say, you buy Final Shape Deluxe, you do get access to Witch Queen, Final Shape, etc. I do think, Witch Queen, Lightfall, Beyond Light, etc. I think that would fix a lot of things. I think it would make it easier for people to get into it, because it is very hard to justify like a $300 USD investment, right? It's hard to justify that, especially if you don't know if you're going to like the gameplay loop or not. To which, I mean, sure, the free-to-play option exists, and there's been proponents saying that free-to-play option shouldn't exist because it's inherently bad for the Crucible landscape, especially for cheaters, hackers, etc. Opposite and WoW, all the previous expansions become part of the sub. Yeah, and I think that would help, actually. I think that having access to older content like that would be a good step to onboarding a lot of players. And it would definitely make getting things. I'd love to see the metrics, but I'd love to see the numbers on who in 2025 is still purchasing like Shadowkeep and stuff, or 30th anniversary, because Grasp of Avarice, right? Because that's actually locked behind content, or locked behind a paywall. Yeah, that a big sentiment is the cost, because there's a cost-benefit analysis. I mean, Final Fantasy XIV, I pay my sub, I keep my sub running, right? Especially with my retainers and stuff, right? But it's also one of those things like, okay, do I spend like $60-ish approximately every 6 or so months when I could just forego buying, I don't know, Call of Duty or a AAA, quadruple A game, right? So to me, I can make that justification. But not everybody can make that justification. People want to buy, their yearly Call of Duties. People want to buy a new Battlefield. There's arguments, absolutely. And so I kind of justify it as I'm effectively buying a game. Buying, quote unquote, right? Obviously, like, leasing content for a period of time. Or the DLC, right? So that was breaking point. I just said nope. And I think that a lot of people are definitely... it's egregious to a lot of people. I mean, right now, the Switch 2 is a lot of people are having that back and forth discourse about games pricing. 80 digital, 90 physical, $150 for everything when not on sale. Then that's down from when I last checked. Because when I last checked, it was about $300. $150 is just like a Call of Duty Super Deluxe Edition for all intents and purposes. That financial burden has been made easier. I personally don't care about microtransactions as long as they're not pay to win, whatever, season pass skip, battle pass skip. People get behind, it happens. I get it. I personally don't care. It's whatever. Let people spend money on things. Dungeon Key, yeah, it kind of sucks. Don't get me wrong. I just buy the big boy edition anyways because I know I'm going to get more than 60 hours of playtime in a year out of Destiny, right? How many games have you bought for $60? How many games have you bought, the premium edition for that you got, say, 20 to 60, maybe even 80 hours out of? I'd have to check my hours so far. I'd have to check a lot. Like, I've definitely gotten more than 60 hours. Probably this month. The month just rolled over, too. Probably not this month. But in the last week or so, I've probably gotten more than 60 hours out of Destiny. And that's a fine conversion rate for me. You are paying into a live service ecosystem. That's my counter to that point. This is a valid point of criticism and contention, I feel. I think that it absolutely is. To me, I'm able to justify that cost because I, one, have sunk cost fallacy, two, been playing this game for a hot minute on and off. And 3, I can justify the time spent on the game.
I think the Destiny community that was once outraged at the Taken King for being too expensive would react if they could see this now, and all for a game that is still only sometimes good. And it is sometimes good. If you want to experience a solid third of Destiny 2's good, you can't, because Forsaken is now in the Destiny content vault, which is to say, it's gone. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Removing paid content. Not to be downloaded separately. Gone as in fucking gone, man. As in you can't play it anymore. I'm sure it would have been difficult to solve.
I think from the lawsuit right now, I think it's been conveyed that the code is actually inoperable on the current engine. I mean, not that I don't think that matters for anything copyright reason-wise, like they still own the IP, right? But it is currently inoperable. Once again, getting back to the argument earlier of vaulting content, vaulting paid content, you are paying into a live service. They can remove it at any point in time. You are paying for that licensed access for a period of time. We need to be fair across the board. I have heard next to nobody complain about Warframe losing raids. At least I haven't sought out those conversations. I'm sure they exist. And that being said, it could be I don't know if they're necessarily paid for. Yeah, it's going to suck, especially when you pay for something. Like on my Steam, it still shows I own Warmind, Curse of Osiris, Red War, but obviously it's not in the game. We need to be fair with our criticism across the board. I'm not saying to give Destiny a free pass on this. I'm saying contextually, this is modern gaming. Do something about it, right? You can't say that, oh, when Destiny does it, it's wrong, but if something like Call of Duty did it, suddenly it's okay, right? That's the dual talk that I'm saying we need to get rid of. It needs to be fair across the board.
This problem. But since that content was beloved and costed a large amount of money, I sure hope that they tried really hard. But the thing is, none of this means that I was right. I thought this would keep happening, that it would get worse. But I also thought that people would just keep taking it. They didn't. It's been too long. The meta-narrative ran out of villains and ran out of future to promise. The things we understood as the things we were building towards. The end of the Light and Dark saga, this 10-year journey. They got close, and as they did, the impression that Destiny was becoming had to be replaced by the acceptance that Destiny had become. Destiny is no longer hoped for. With the end of Destiny's narrative, its meta-narrative ended too. Destiny's problem today is spiritual. It's the result of 1,000 cuts. Not all of them are about the game itself. Some of them are about what's happened outside it. The CEO collecting classic cars while his company crumbled. The fact that PvP was just abandoned while money and talent were siphoned from Destiny to fund Bungie's other trend-chasing projects. And then there's all the people who lost their jobs. I don't know if there's a future where those jobs survived. I don't know the economic facts, but I do know what was said. I know that among the laid off was Michael Salvatore, which is a bit like deciding to lose weight by cutting out your own heart. A company that doesn't understand that cannot comprehend.
Didn't they hire him back on as a contractor? I feel like there was a development with this.
The immaterial is blind, and now hollow, it feels like, and it seems unlikely that company would be capable of making the Destiny I want to play. Don't get me wrong, I'll give them a chance, but you have to understand, my heart's not in it anymore. I mean, when you've got laid off community managers, the people who represented Bungie as humanity, ranting about their experiences on Twitter, that does some deep spiritual damage, man. That's rough. That's going to be hard to repair. And I think that cut those last few threads of connection I had. So now you know why I don't love Destiny anymore. I fell out of love with the world. Then it just kept kicking my teeth in. I don't blame it for parts of that, but for a big part, I do. That's why I stopped making Destiny videos. That's what I've wanted to say for the past 6 years. Yeah, it feels good to have finally done it. But Destiny is struggling right now, and that doesn't tell us why, at least not alone. Destiny is struggling to survive because of other people. Other people who could have made a video like this. Other people who've fallen out of love with Destiny for their own reasons. Some of those reasons were inevitable. One of them was good. The story ended, and it actually ended kinda well, and it's hard to survive a good ending. Destiny is also old. I mean nothing more than that. It's an old game, and it ages faster than most because it demands constant attention and the gameplay is good, but people get tired of good things too. It's been 10 years, man. Some of it wasn't inevitable, but that doesn't mean it wasn't difficult to avoid. Seasons are structured well. They do what they're supposed to. But now that Bungie have a structure that works, it never changes. It hasn't changed for such a long time that what has come about is a sense of routine, of predictability, a knowledge that whatever it is you're doing right now, you'll be doing the exact same thing in a few months' time. And from that, a sense of pointlessness. The future is another thing. People struggle to believe in one. The material significance of the layoffs is a company much less capable of making Destiny. And because the universe has failed to repopulate itself with scale, intrigue, and threat, there's the feeling that there's nowhere left to go, no ladder left to climb. Then there's the loot problem. Destiny being old means that the most experienced players have had enough time to get all the best stuff that's so good that Bungie struggled to top it without breaking the game.
So it's almost like being able to run content, being able to get players into content to be able to craft some of these weapons would be pretty cool, right? I mean, sure, absolutely. You can still have your adept Rufus Fury, right? You can still have your adept Zauli's Bane, or I guess Herod, right? Herod Zauli's Bane, absolutely. And those do have access to adept perks. But it definitely makes the gap to catch up a little smaller to have people able to craft Zauli's Bane, to be able to run content more efficiently, and thus get them into this gameplay cycle, right? No, I'm clearly just tripping, dog. I'm clearly tripping. Crafting is clearly bad, and clearly is responsible for people burning themselves out on the game. Clearly, crafting is the issue.
There isn't that much for the hardcore fans to chase anymore. One way of fixing this would be a reset, and a sequel would provide the kind of reset that people would be willing to accept.
No!
But to do that, Bungie would need a huge amount of money, and time, and people. None of which they have. So you look to things besides weapons and armor for players to pursue, like titles, which Destiny has, housing, which Destiny doesn't, or best of all, character customization, which...
I mean, would housing make the game better? Or is this just kind of this would be cool, right? I don't know. Sure, I guess it'd be cool to Neomuna status or some of the seasonal vendors and stuff. How you can find things in the overworld, like the frog from Echoes, and just place it right. Sure, I guess, but is it really a priority? Is it? I don't think it's. And I think this also is playing into the rhetoric, which I used to buy into, that Destiny is an MMO. It's got isms, but it's more a multiplayer game. I don't know if that necessarily addresses things. I think the inevitable conclusion of that is Destiny 2 would introduce housing or apartment system. You would get an initial week or so, week to 2 weeks of people making content on how to blitz the best housing items, housing decor. You'd find people who are definitely, well, this is bugged, grind this now. And then ultimately in 2 weeks, I feel it fades into irrelevance. At least that's my personal view on it. It's MMO light. I could agree with MMO light. It definitely kind of it takes from both. I don't know. I don't know if housing would be the play there, honestly.
Destiny decided to lock behind a microtransaction store. Good move in the short term, bad move in the long term. But if Destiny really does die, what will deliver the final push is its inability to replace its aging population. It's how goddamn tough it is to be a new player. It's how hard it is to play Destiny. When Frontiers comes out and the game is forced to host incomplete chunks of the second half of the old saga, and also the beginning of the new saga, it will become even harder. If anything can kill this game, that's what will do it. And if it dies, it'll deserve to. But the thing is, I don't want Destiny to die. Because that would be immature, but I don't hate it. I don't even dislike the game. Honestly, it's pretty good. I'm just frustrated with it, disappointed in it. Sometimes I've been appalled by it, but I don't hate it. I hate that I don't love it anymore. It's complicated. Here's some more complicated. I really want Frontiers to be good. I want nothing but the best for Destiny. I still want to love this game again. I don't think it'll happen, but I want it to. I'm still hoping. That's tough, because that's how I've always felt, and it's let them get away with everything. It's had me open my wallet year after year to pay too much for too little. It wasn't even Bungie who made half the best things about it. All those moments from raid LFGs, playing with friends, belonging to a wonderful community. And here's what's really tough. It was worth it. $40 for good memories? That's some of the best money I'll ever spend. Destiny is worth more than its own content because it is a social platform. It always has been. What am I supposed to make of that? I have no idea. I don't think there's a simple answer. If I hadn't accepted that, this video would have cracked and shattered like all the times I tried before it. The last bit of complicated I've got for you is this. I've never fallen out of love with a game before, because most games don't change enough for that to happen. Arkham Knight is still the same game it was a year ago, and it'll still be that game in 10 years' time. But the most I ever loved Destiny is gone. I mean, Forsaken is really gone. But what about the first game? You can play it again, but you can't bring back the people who made it special. Its questions can't be unanswered. It can't be rediscovered. In some part, Destiny wasn't a game, it was a moment. The best of its times were times. Times change, moments pass. people move on. Then that moment becomes a memory. Destiny is dead. I'm not used to games dying. It's sad, but not wrong. Destiny is alive. For now, at least. Many things make it worthy of that life. The gameplay, the sheer amount of content, heresy, which is shockingly good as seasons go. Will Frontiers be good? I don't know. Maybe. Kinda doubt it, but I hope so. I hope they figure out the loot problem and the PvP. I hope wherever we go, it's a world of wonder and thought, and nothing like the places we're used to. I hope I can't help but fill it with imagination, and that eventually we'll get answers that are big and strange and interesting. Like, in the game, not on Bife's YouTube channel. And if that happens, I believe the rest will follow suit. I believe there'll be people again, and love, and its flaws will be worth tolerating. I hope it'll make everyone happy, even though that's not possible. I hope Destiny will get to be a moment worth being there for again, but I will not let hope lure me into another raw deal. And if it's none of those things, I'm okay with that now. Destiny, I let you go.
I think this is a very good faith video. I think this is a very good faith argument. I liked a lot of what was presented here. Sure, I mean, I have a couple disagreements.
Special thanks go out to Ren's Reviews for so much of this video's Destiny 1 footage. And for my patrons, L. Hudson, Lex Williams, Andre Baltuta, Holy Shift, Dennis Williams, Combat Wombat, John Lemley, Dylan Schaefer Murphy, The Last Great Opium Den, Have a Nice Day, Dan Walker, DJ, Weak Sentry, Chino, Chase Baker, Dogs, Ate My Pancreas, William Vossler, Joe Simmons, I Pay My Cam Girl So Why Not You, Arcturus, Navy Husky, MT the Poet, Deluxo, Dr. Pavel, Carlos Skibber, Enzo, John C., Corey Walterbeek, Monochrome Only, Ethan Seach, Pib, Fat Guy 688, Joshua Carr, Purple PP, Joshua Lovejoy, Veda, Cole Bramlett, Pat Xi, Lubos Thomas, Whitelight Best Girl, Tentmaker Kafka, New XC, Very Professional Dodo, Douglas Totally Straight Up Anonymous Yo, Mark Carter, Nikita Shoshin, Dog Best Dog, I Echolocate My Husband Using Your Voice, Nebulous Rascal, Bumble, Grumble, Double, Crumble, Bumhole, Pummel, Shovel, Puddle, Huddle, Jumble, Tidemore, LA Lockwood, Anna Haig, Fox Hunt, Logan Briggs, Eddie, Rams, Stephen Francisco Santana, Daryl Tankersley, The Lightweight Whitelight Wait to Light Late Whites, Oh My God Why 2, Robert Thompson, Hope.exe, Darkest Matter, XD Shadow Frog, Shun Kobayashi, and Pugsley the Fourth.
I kind of dig it. I don't know how we made this 2 hours. I keep telling myself I want to get to more edited works and stuff. I want to get to other projects. But then I spend 2 hours talking about Destiny. Like the time just flies. I literally go into the VexNet 100%. I don't know how this happened. I think this is a good video. I think this is a good faith. I mean, don't take any sort of arguments or criticism that I have as an attack, as I know the internet is wont to do. Because it's not. I think there were a lot of good faith points brought up. I think that there were a lot of things that, yeah, I mean, sure. The desire for community being a moment in time and that not being around anymore. And then the simultaneous desire to, return to the old, simultaneous desire to for new things, simultaneous desire for things wanting to be in game, but also the community. I think there's some conflicting points here, but I think they ultimately do feed into, yeah, I get Destiny 2 is a very conflicting and polarizing game for many people. If you have an issue getting people into your game, the new player conundrum, you will inherently just have issues keeping the game alive. I think that having a better new player experience would be really good. I think that, being able, even if it's not in game, being able to have the community be able to help people. And that's why I'm like, as long as you can play the game, as long as you know how to, as long as you know what you're doing, and I mean that in the loosest sense possible, you know how to like do your damage rotation. Like, yeah, you should feel empowered to get with the community. I mean, I know there's people who Sherpa raids, people far better than me who can hard carry raids. They actively want to help people. There are some pretty good diehard players out there. I come back to the game every now and again. I do enjoy it. I will unfortunately sit on the menu sometimes because I'm just like, I'll log in and I'm like, I want to get my pinnacles this week. What is the pinnacles, right? Well, I need a group to do GMs, can't do that. I need a group for Crotas, can't do that. Need a group for Vault of Glass, can't do that. And so, yeah, that lack of social does definitely hurt. But I think that's from the understanding that Destiny 2 is a very social game. It is a social experience. It is a moment in time, right? Fun while it lasts. And I think inherently you will run into the issue as well with the conclusion of any arc, right? Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker was the conclusion of 10 years of story, right? People are going to just leave. They're 30, they're 40, they're 50 now, right? They're just going to happen. They're just going to leave. So Final Shape, especially with the conclusion it had after the raid concluded, I was in one of the first groups to actually do the excision activity, because I remember when, like, oh, we're getting reports that this group actually cleared it, and it was none of the big groups streaming. And then, yeah, went into it. It was a good finale, and I think a lot of people are fine to let that rest, and that's fine. And I think it is absolutely okay to be frustrated. I'm not saying it's not. You are allowed to have your frustrations. You're allowed to have your stressors. Just make sure that they're the right frustrations and stressors. Just make sure that you're able to back it with logic. And, you don't need to necessarily seek validation. So I've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying getting back into it again. It's definitely one of those games that I play when I'm waiting for save videos to convert in my other monitor or uploading videos. I absolutely still enjoy raiding. I'm definitely one of those players, as I said, who will run 7-8 raids in a single sitting because it's fun for me to do. And there's a lot that I'd like to share in terms of Destiny, but there's also a lot that is hard to share because even amongst experienced players, I've seen some people do some really dumb things in raids. It's one of those that it's a time sink. On one hand, yes, the veteran part of the community should absolutely be welcoming to newcomers, should absolutely be willing to extend that. Yes, let's go run this raid. But on the other hand, I physically cannot sit 4 hours in Vault of Glass anymore. If it's an odd teaching run, I will maybe do 2. I cannot spend 4 hours in Vault of Glass anymore. I certainly cannot spend 7 hours in Garden of Salvation. Yeah, I'm fine doing a teaching run. I cap out about 2.5, 3 hours. It needs to be respectful on both sides. There needs to be, yes, an intro to new players, but there also needs to be respect for older players who don't have time to sit there spending 4 to 6 hours in a raid. That's not reasonable for anybody. And especially with the people who are just like, oh, I know what to do, and clearly just can't run the raid, right? You look at them like, how do you have a clear? How do you physically have a clear on this raid? Just be honest, right? People will appreciate the honesty. Don't try to lie and say you know what to do. It just wastes time for everybody involved, and everybody leaves frustrated. This is some same relationship and emotions a lot of War Thunder players have. We like the base game memories made. Devs do some questionable, detrimental decisions. Yeah, exactly. It's just picking what you want to do. Personally, I do enjoy Destiny. I know a lot of people, especially who have come out to the Discord, they've definitely voiced their frustrations. I'm not saying you're not valid by any means. There are valid frustrations. There's not really much acknowledgement that I can do. And I'm still there to run what content I physically can, and would like to run more content, because between Final Fantasy XIV and Destiny 2, I've got a pretty solid live service lineup. But thank you everyone for watching. Definitely thank you to Whitelight for an awesome video. I think he brought up a lot of good points in this. I think there's a lot of discourse that can happen. I think there's a lot of healthy back and forth that this game can have. And I don't know how I made this 2 hours. But I'm going to go end this video now. So thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you in the next one.